everyone. I'll call the Community Development, Housing, and General Government Committee to order. Do we know if Dan is coming? We haven't heard otherwise.
Haven't heard yet.
He'll probably walk in 5 seconds.
Or he'll come at 4.
Oh, that's true. Before we get started, I'd like to beg the indulgence of the committee and staff to, since this is my last General Government Committee, I'd like to suggest a couple of things. One, and I think this has actually been talked about with the city manager, it has gotten so, certainly in the last number of months, that we spend all of our time in committee, a whole hour and a half virtually, on housing cases. I would like to suggest that housing needs to be broken off in some way, either handled before or at a different time, and I'd like to suggest a different format, and here our attorney might have to weigh in on how this could work. If you look at all of these cases, virtually everyone who has had a citation has not bothered to call the office. No one bothers. Well, to my mind, that means they really don't care. And therefore, I would suggest that the committee consider a situation where if the people cited, homeowners cited, have not contacted the staff, that their property goes directly on a demolition list and there's no presentation in front of the committee.
You will still have to go to the council.
Yeah. But that, if they haven't bothered with 2 notifications to even phone to contact anyone, I'd say that they've shown that they have no interest in it. And to show up at the last minute is, I think, one of the reasons that we sometimes have such a backlog. So, hey, I can't make the rules anymore, so I never have been able
Well taken, though.
But if the upcoming committee would like to consider that, I think it might speed things along. Give us time to consider policy things, and instead of demolition of houses, and only demolition of houses. So, at any rate, that's my 2 cents worth. So,
Good 2 cents.
Well
worth spent.
So, as is usually the case, we will start with our consent agenda, which is that many housing cases. So, let me tell you what Stephanie has handed me of the list of under C2. F and G have been repaired, so you can take those off your list. We have to pull C4A for a technical reason. And was there another one, Stephanie? Or was that it?
Is there anything under C3?
No, that's just the accessory building. Someone's working on one of those, but it still needs to go through.
Okay.
So, okay, all right. If we could have C1, please.
Can I also pull? Is now the time to tell you which one, anything else we want to pull?
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
please.
Just C5 for an attaboy for the Oak Crest Historic District, which crosses both Edie and my ward.
Yeah.
Shout out to them.
C5. Okay, all right. And anything else?
I move for approval of the balance of the consent agenda, Madam Chair.
Second?
Can I ask a quick question? I'm sorry. Are you going to go through the list?
Yes,
Okay.
except for the housing
Yeah.
cases, right, yeah. Okay. I'm going to call out the addresses, and if anyone is here to speak to those.
We vote on the
Balance.
balance.
Yeah, let's do or else wait until we've gone through. Well, go ahead.
Motion to approve,
Okay,
balance.
Yeah, we,
okay.
first, I made the motion, he seconded.
Okay, all right, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, good, thank you. Okay, 801 25th Street, 1807 East 4th Street, 1901 East 3rd Street, 2835 Rowell Street, 506 Alexander Street, 224 Terrace Avenue. That's one of the ones that's pulled, yeah, okay. 670 Glenbrook Drive, 805 Hutton Street, 1406 Diggs Boulevard, 2829 Gilmer Avenue. So no one is here to speak to any of those. Are there any comments from council members? I will have one comment, if I may, on 805 Hutton Street. This is a case that we'll talk about later, about parking and all this, that, and the other little lots with shared driveways. And the neighbor of this one is very concerned that their shared driveway will be destroyed. So if I'll ask staff to just take a look at that. Okay, do I have a motion on the rest of these?
Motion approved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. C3.
Ordinance ordering the demolition and removal of structure pursuant to Chapter 10, Article 5, Section 10203F2 of the City Code of the City of Winston-Salem.
Thank you. This is repairs more than 50% of the value of the structure. I have here 810 Rich Avenue, 1220 North Jackson Avenue, 1347 Dunleaf Avenue, 1917 East 3rd Street, wow, 4538 Chatillon, 1417 East 22nd Street, and 2238 School Street. There's no one here to speak to any of these properties. Committee,
Motion to approve.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
This, I think, is going to be, after I made my speech, this is going to be the shortest.
It's a good way to go out. You'll be remembered for your efficiency.
Remember when Molly was here, we had a meeting about 15 minutes.
Yeah. Okay, C4.
Ordinance ordering the Community and Business Development Department of the City of Winston-Salem to remove a demolished structure unfit for human habitation and otherwise to effectuate the purpose of Chapter 10, Article 5 of the Winston-Salem City Code, repairs more than 65% of the value of structure.
Okay. As I say, A has been pulled. So the three others on this list are 745 Barney Avenue, 3313 Urban Street, and 4930 Germantown Road. Okay. May I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Wow.
What did you do with C1?
Did we not do C1?
I didn't hear it.
That was part of the, yeah.
I just want to make sure I didn't hear it.
Okay, and C5 you had wanted.
C5, I just wanted to call attention to the Oak Crest neighborhood, and I don't know if anybody's here from the group, but it's a historic neighborhood that half of it is in my ward, half of it is in Ms. Adams' ward, and it's just a great neighborhood. The folks there have been very active and very proactive in protecting their neighborhood and coming to meetings and holding meetings, and I just wanted to acknowledge all the work that they've done and how happy I am to see that happen. Susan and I did a restoration project in that neighborhood, and it's a wonderful little neighborhood and facing a little pressure from Wake Forest, but seems to be making a comeback very nicely.
Yeah. So, you,
So motion to approve?
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. So, did we get everything on consent? I think so. Okay. So we will move to the general agenda. Whoops. Okay, G1.
Item G1, ordinance amending Chapters A and B of the Unified Development Ordinances to create the uses brewery or distillery and special events center, UDO 271, proposal of the City County Planning and Development Services staff, recommended by the Planning Board.
Good afternoon, council members, Mr. Mayor.
Good afternoon.
Just to give you a little background on this item, breweries, distilleries, and event centers, as you're probably all aware, are new business types that have become much more common and popular in Winston-Salem in recent years, particularly in some of our urban downtown and near-in areas, which have been revitalizing in recent years. They've had quite a resurgence in those facilities. And microbreweries and microdistilleries are businesses that brew or distill alcoholic beverages and often include complementary features such as tap rooms or tasting rooms. Event centers, on the other hand, host private functions such as banquets, weddings, parties, and other events. And currently, our Unified Development Ordinances lack specific rules for these classifications. What that means from an enforcement and permitting standpoint is that most breweries and distilleries have had to be classified as the closest available UDO use, which in this case has been restaurant without drive-through, with the actual brewing or distilling on site being considered an accessory use. So again, not the best tool in the toolbox, but what we've had to work with so far. Existing event centers, on the other hand, have been classified as stadium, coliseum, or exhibition building, which is intended for much larger facilities like the Joel Coliseum or the Benton Convention Center. So again, not really what we think of when we think of a 3,000 square foot event center. So this amendment would create distinct land uses for those two uses. The proposed microbrewery or microdistillery use does include some use conditions. The first of those is this use would have a maximum size of 12,000 square feet. If it was going to be larger than that, then it would be considered a manufacturing use, and where it would be allowed would be much more limited, basically industrial type districts. But the goal of this is to allow it to take place in more commercially oriented places such as downtown or West End, Millworks, or some of these other projects where we've seen breweries go in. So we're proposing to allow this use with a zoning permit in business, entertainment, mixed use, and industrial districts. Another requirement that we're proposing here is a tap room or tasting room would need to be a part of the facility, and that would need to take up at least 10% of the gross floor area. And this requirement would only be in non-industrial areas because, again, breweries are an industrial use that makes sense without having a commercial component. But everywhere else, we really don't want to have industrial uses on their own going into commercial or mixed-use areas, so that's why we have that provision. One other point is one parking space would be required per 100 square feet of tap room or tasting room space, and one parking space would also be required per 575 square feet of brewery or distillery space. Moving on to the special event centers, we're proposing a maximum size of 20,000 square feet for this use. Larger facilities would be considered that stadium, coliseum, or exhibition use that I mentioned earlier, and this use would be allowed with a zoning permit in business, entertainment, industrial, campus, and mixed-use districts, but it would be allowed in large lot districts, RS20, RS30, RS40, agriculture, and YR in Forsyth County with a special use permit. So you all may have been familiar with, there's some places more in rural outlying areas of the county or other more tourist-heavy destinations where people take farms or things of that nature, and they have farm weddings, venues like that. That's what we're really thinking of when we see these taking place in large lot zoning districts. But given the proximity of residences in those areas, we feel like the Board of Adjustment would be the best place for that to happen through the special use process with sworn testimony, findings of fact, and all of those things. We're also proposing a parking requirement for this use of 1 space per 225 square feet of event center space. And that means not only indoor space, but any outdoor space as well, since some of these facilities have outdoor event space. There's also a few other requirements that we're proposing for event centers in non-industrial districts. And the first would be new structures must have direct vehicular access on a major or minor thoroughfare or collector street. And again, that's because we don't want the traffic impacts associated with a event center use to be going through neighborhoods. So this would effectively keep these uses on the edges of neighborhoods or in more commercial areas. And also, any converted structure that this use would be going into must be no more than 1,500 feet from a thoroughfare or collector. So a little more flexibility than a new structure, but we want to make sure that there's another tool in the toolbox for using vacant buildings and making sure they don't drag neighborhoods down. Also, 40-foot setbacks in a type 3 buffer yard, which is a double row of evergreen trees, a very solid screen, are required between any activity areas and residentially zoned property. And when I say activity areas, that means the structure itself, any outdoor event space, and also the parking. So the goal is to really shield neighboring properties from the impacts of this use, minimal though they may be. And we're also proposing adding these requirements to the existing stadium, coliseum, or exhibition building use. When this was put in the UDO in 1994, there probably wasn't as much thought to conditions like this, but as zoning has changed and cities have become more involved in their community character, we think it makes sense that a large facility like the Joel Coliseum should provide buffers if there's a adjoining property meeting these criteria as well. With that being said, staff believes these new uses will continue to become more common in the future, and this text amendment will help accommodate those businesses while protecting and respecting community character. A planning board public hearing was held on this amendment in September, and the board did recommend approval. I'll be glad to answer any questions at this time.
Questions?
First, I'm going to assume that staff had plenty of opportunity to do firsthand research on the distillery and brewery.
We'll plead no comment on that.
All right. I'm wondering about the 12,000 square foot size and how that was arrived at. I'm thinking of Foothills, and that building's probably pretty close to 12,000 square feet, if not more, is it not?
That is one of the facilities we looked at. I can't recall off the top of my head what it was, but I know the staff who did this, the research for this item, looked at several of the existing facilities around town, particularly the more urban facilities, and kind of benchmarked that as where this cap would be, trying to make sure that those facilities would fall in this microbrewery or microdistillery use.
Is there an appeal process to that? I know Camel City Barbecue is 15,000 square feet. It's a big operation. If that were a brewery, if they were to incorporate a brewery in there, would they be precluded?
Well, no, because Camel City Barbecue, something like that, we still have the tool of restaurant in our toolbox. This is really just another tool that we can get uses like something that's really much more of a brewery. There's not really any food involved. They might have a little tap room or something like that where they serve samples, but that's really what this is designed for. We'd still probably permit something like Camel City or Foothills as a restaurant.
Or if the bar component, I know my sons live in Raleigh, and there are a couple of bars down there that advertise 150 beers, whatever, and also have a brewery. So as long as the actual manufacturing side of it is not 12,000 square feet, then there's some room to sort of adjust.
Well, for this particular use, it's the whole facility is under that 12,000 square feet.
Yeah. Okay.
But again, we're also talking about gross floor area, so it wouldn't be things like a storage closet or things of that nature. It would be the active, the use-based portion of the facility. So there is a little bit of wiggle room with that. But again, we also have for larger brewery facilities, we still have the more industrially oriented brewery facility. This is really for use with things that are more kind of in the urban fringe or the downtown core where you're closer to neighborhoods and you have an opportunity to get something that was never easily permitted before. It's really meant to open more doors, not close off any doors that we already have.
But let's say I've got a concept and I want to do a 15,000 square foot microbrewery operation. Is there an appeal process to
there wouldn't be any appeal process in terms of this ordinance. If it was 15,000 square feet, then we'd have to try and fit it in the industrial use category if there wasn't going to be any food served.
Okay, all right. And then my last one is, are the parking requirements for these uses roughly similar to that of a tavern?
Yes. And Councilmember McIntosh, just to make a point, the 12,000 square feet isn't a magic number, so if council feels like that number should be higher, lower, staff would be fine with that. This is just something that we kind of threw out benchmarking some of the existing uses in the community.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Yes. I'm glad to see that we're doing this. We might, I don't know whether we're behind the other cities in North Carolina, but I knew this was coming. I'd be interested to know how many micro or distillery breweries are there in the city right now? Not the county, the city. Just like how the wineries popped up all over the place. I think it's good that we're now looking at this industry because in my mind, I'm wondering how much growth is there going to continue to be. You can saturate a market and, you know, the city's only so big. But one of the things that I was interested in, and you basically answered that, is, I guess, are we getting a lot of requests for this type permitting within the city? I know, I think we got another new one coming up on Martin Luther King.
Mm-hmm.
No?
Yeah.
And again, are we getting a lot of requests?
We've seen more interest in the past couple of years. For a long while, it was nothing. Then around 2004, I guess Foothills came into existence. And then there was nothing for a while. And then I guess probably 4 or 5 years ago, we got several. We got the Broad Branch Distillery, we got Hoots, we got Small Batch. So we've got about half a dozen facilities in the Winston-Salem city limits currently. And if we look at our peer cities, you mentioned other cities, we did benchmark their ordinances, and yes, most other cities do have ordinances for this use. It's a trend statewide that there's a lot more craft brewing or distilling operations going in the city. So I think this positions us well to accommodate that.
Okay. Have we looked at, I guess not just the breweries, distilleries, because there is a difference. I'd like to see if staff could get that to us sometime, just in a note, an email or whatever. What are the microbreweries that we have, and what are the micro distilleries? Because one of the things is,
You gonna go try them all?
yes, I am.
I'll show them to you.
I worked at a brewery for 18 and a half years, so I always knew the size of Schlitz/Stroh brewery type. Again, manufacturing was not going to be around 30, 40 years later. The lifespan of a major manufacturing brewery, it was 30 years. That was the standard for Budweiser, Miller, all of them. And I knew that they would eventually be able to produce more, just as much beer or product in a smaller facility. And for those that don't know where that brewery was, it was one of the largest that Schlitz or anybody built when it opened in 1969, I think. But I'd like to know about the distilleries as well, because that's another thing that's taken off in the past 5 to 6 years, is people are interested in craft beverages of alcohol content, mixed drink cocktails, or types that you can just buy, like our grandparents and others used to make in the backyard. And people, the trend is like craft beer. That used to be something that people did years ago historically, but it seems the trend, everybody wants local, whether it's not just their food, but their alcohol. So
We'll be glad to put together a list of those and send that to you.
thank you so much for the work you guys have put into this. Appreciate it.
Is there any other question then?
I just had one on the event space side of it. What's the reasoning behind the structures no more than 1,500 feet from a collector, or no closer than 1,500 feet?
It would be no further than 1,500 from collector.
Okay,
And
what's the reason behind that?
The reason behind that is, again, if you look at some of these event centers, they're probably going to be doing mostly things like weddings and things of that nature. And we were trying to protect neighborhood cores from having a lot of traffic go through them for weddings. So there may have been a site otherwise in a neighborhood core that could have looked good for one of these uses. But if you don't have this requirement, then if one gets built there, you're going to have a lot of traffic going through the neighborhood. So we felt it was an additional layer of protection.
Okay. Thanks.
Maybe I'm off page here. Now that you mentioned, I think you put something in their stadiums, or wasn't there something in this UDO that you mentioned stadiums, or you mentioned
Yes.
before you mentioned the UDO?
It would be those same use conditions that I mentioned about the size and the location for those facilities. We would apply those same conditions to new stadiums as well, because again, we see these two uses, the existing stadium and this event center, as being kind of parallel uses. One is just a smaller version of the other. So if you have protections for the smaller one, it made sense to us that neighbors should be protected from the larger one as well.
And does this have anything to do with the movement around I'm just asking because you put it there. I question the Reynolds High School type stadium deal.
No, that's a separate use in
separate
the
usage.
UDO. That's school stadium. There's separate parking requirements and a separate process for
Okay,
that. So
good
this is
enough.
unrelated.
Good enough.
May I have
I
a
move
motion?
for approval.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Before we move on to the next one, I was just made aware of a seminal event that Miss Stephanie is leaving us too. Hey, we're going to go out together and have fun, all right? Yeah, so this will be your last meeting, and I certainly, and I'm sure the committee joins me in thanking you for all your work for the community. Oh, boy. Yeah.
I wonder who's taking over.
Okay. Thank you very much. All right. G2, please.
Item G2, resolution containing the City of Winston-Salem's legislative program for the 2017 legislative session.
Good afternoon.
Good
afternoon.
afternoon, Madam Attorney.
Your legislative package has 4 bills and 2 resolutions, and I'll walk you through those briefly. If you look at page 23, the first bill is basically being offered because the city, as part of the housing code enforcement process, when it's unable to locate the property owner, in particular, this comes up when we have an absentee property owner and air property, we have to publish the complaint, notice of hearing, and publish the order. And the city spends about $18,000 a year doing that, and that cost is basically borne by the city. This bill would allow that cost to be assessed as a lien against the property, so we can hopefully collect it if the property is sold. So that's the purpose of the first bill.
Just a question, we'll never collect that money in most cases, correct? So it's a paper
Well,
victory.
we could, in theory, foreclose on the property to get the money back. So if it's property that's worth foreclosing on and potentially selling under the foreclosure procedure, it's possible.
So the city could foreclose
As it
outside
comes
of,
to tax lien.
okay, that's interesting, thank you.
If it's not paid, it becomes a tax.
Okay.
Okay, the second bill was requested because there's a desire to return the city's or council's election cycle to the odd number years. And so that is the purpose of the second bill, which is on page 25. And you all tell me if you want a particular bill pulled from the package.
Yeah. Ms. Stephanie.
I don't know about council, but I think I would feel all of us are very passionate about this one. Again, I feel as though when the general legislature comes back in their session after the new people are sworn in, this is going to be at the top of the list because they really want to take everybody across the state to even years of the presidential and whatever. So, and their reasoning is it would save money on the electorate process. So I'm very much in favor of this one because it was discussed at our last League of Municipalities board meeting in Raleigh during the conference. Everybody is a little bit edgy about this, even though everybody knew when this happened to us. I communicated it, And I just think everybody felt that it really was never going to happen to them. It was just another individual city that, with individual legislation. Well, now everybody is getting ready to go under this, and I think it's just good for us. I really do. Thank you.
And I will point out, too, that certainly this election has shown us what a burden it is on candidates to be in the presidential year, because a lot of people could care less about the down ballot.
Right.
And so they're just voting blindly, and it can make a difference.
If I can speak to that, having just gone through that
Yes.
rinse cycle. There were a lot more votes cast in my race and all the race, but mine was competitive. But I don't think there was any more interest or any more knowledge to the general public. They were coming out to vote for something completely different.
Correct.
So it does not do the city of Winston-Salem any positive service to have more people come out to the polls.
No.
It's much more difficult to get your message out when you're competing with big items on the ballot. So I think it's it doesn't do us any service at the local level. I think it takes people's attention away from us, and I think if anything, we want people more involved in local government. And on an off cycle, I think we get that to a much greater degree, even though we have fewer people turn out. Those people are more committed.
They're there to vote
Right.
specifically about local issues and candidates, and so presumably they're knowledgeable about that, whereas when it's at the bottom of the presidential ballot,
Well, in my race, I think there were about 85,000 votes in my race. The presidential, I think, were 130, something
Yeah.
like that. So a lot of people just skipped it.
Yeah.
They skipped us when they got down to the
yeah, very true. Mr. Montgomery?
Not that I disagree with anything that has been stated, but the only thing I caution in reference to this is the current makeup of the legislature, that bringing this to their attention and this request could result in adverse effect in terms of some of the things we've seen, the way they've attempted to deal with other cities. And so I would just wonder what type of potential response, as we understand there's an attempt, but there would be a likely desire for many other legislators to see other municipalities shift to presidential elections, and then even the makeup and how districts are drawn are things that people have concern about at the state level. And so whether or not us raising this to that level puts us right in the center of that at this time. And so that is a concern that I have, in that just because of the fact of knowing what has happened at the state level when it comes to city councils and town councils.
Councilman Montgomery and the city attorney can help me with this, the mayor and others. When this was when this was fast-tracked to change our terms, we were the only ones then.
Yeah.
And we tried to fight the good fight, and we met with our legislative caucus on both sides of the aisle. I even talked to some of the legislators that weren't from here, who everybody knew that Winston-Salem was basically the guinea pig, the prototype, to see what they're going to study the numbers, analyze the data, and see compared to this year, to see all of it changes their plan, because most of us had nobody to run against, so they will not be able to determine whether it benefits some to do that. I don't think it puts us in a bad situation. I believe that, as we all have seen, government is a process, and it's a process of the people and the people that represent the citizens. I believe this shows that we are very mindful of the fact that what they did, now is the time to do this. Look at the data. It didn't change anything. We still have what we had, in spite of a contentious political election cycle. This won't change anything, because they're still going to lump us over there with everybody else when they get ready to do this. I don't think it'll hurt us. I don't think when it comes to cities like Asheville and Charlotte and others who had to take on what they believe, I believe, again, it just shows that Winston-Salem, we're not going to fall lockstep. We didn't like it when they did it, and we don't like it now. So we're asking them to just come back and relook at it. That's all we ask.
And I would add that the General Assembly is now looking at this whole issue, perhaps from the standpoint of changing everyone else's election cycle to even number years, but they're looking at it. So I think it's time appropriate, because here we can say we tried it. The consequences of being in an even number year with the presidential election basically resulted in less attention for the local issues and local concerns. And so because they're having this discussion anyway, we can at least put our concerns out there without necessarily being boisterous about it or asking for trouble.
Those are all logical.
Ours will not be the only voice telling Raleigh this is not the right way to do it. At their conference in Raleigh recently at the League of Municipalities, I spoke to a lot of people about it, since I was one of the only ones in the state running opposed, on the new cycle. And there was across the board, big towns, small towns, Republicans, Democrats, there was sort of a unanimous pushback on that. I think municipalities recognize the damage that this can do to them. Now, so I don't think we will be a lone voice in this. So I feel comfortable bringing this up.
Mr. Mayor.
Molly, this is just a little bit parochial, I guess, but we got knocked out of 1 year
Yes.
our last term. If we do this, we get knocked out of another year. Constitutionally, could we make the next cycle 2021?
Yeah, 5 years. I was thinking
Yeah.
about that too.
To make up that 1 year we lost.
I'll look at it.
I mean, it may not be possible.
It may not, but I'll look at it.
Derwin?
Well, and that's part of my thing too. The folks voted for a 4-year term.
Yeah.
And so I don't.
Well,
I don't think so, but I'll.
yeah, that's, well, I'm not going to say what I was going to say. That's, I'll
Okay.
wait until after I'm no longer on the city council, and then I'll say it.
Let it to the editor.
Okay, the next one is on page 29. You may recall there was some confusion about independent and nonpartisan candidates in the process because of the language in our charter, which was different from the language in the state statute and case law. And so essentially this bill will conform our charter to the state law, which we have to abide by. So that's all. It just removes obsolete language.
Right.
The next one is on page 31, and it deals with the body-worn camera, and dashboard camera recordings. As you know, the General Assembly during this last session amended the legislation relating to public records and recordings. And essentially, as it stands right now, if someone wants to get a copy of a video recording, they have to basically go to court and get a court order that allows that. There is a process that allows disclosure, which is inspection and reviewing of the video by persons who are depicted in the video, in the recording. And so there's a process for that. However, what happened when this bill was enacted, it took away some tools that we currently use. One in particular relates to the Citizen Police Review Board. Heretofore, the Citizen Police Review Board, which reviews complaints against police department employees, will in closed session look at the body-worn camera video or the dashboard camera video to determine whether or not a hearing in that particular complaint is appropriate. Well, when the legislation was enacted, it took away the city's ability to allow the Citizen Police Review Board to look at those recordings. It also, at least as it appears on, I guess, within the four corners of the page, it appears to have taken away the police department's ability to allow the city manager to even review the dashboard camera recordings and the body-worn camera recordings. And finally, it appears that city council, even in closed session, if it felt the need to review the recordings from the body-worn camera or the dashboard under the law as it currently exists, cannot do that. So I had some conversations with Senator Lowe about the bill and some of the deficiencies, and mainly those three that I just mentioned. And he indicated to me that he would like to put forward an amendment to the bill, but he wanted an amendment that he thought he could get through both chambers, both the House and the Senate. And so that's what you have before you, a bill that essentially for the city of Winston-Salem would allow the Citizen Police Review Board to be able to review the recordings from the body-worn camera and the dashboard camera as part of its review process, like it was doing before. It clarifies, again, that the city manager can review the recordings as well, and that the city council can, in closed session, after you sign the confidentiality statement, review the recordings. While you could not come out and say that the recording shows this, that, and the other, you could say to the citizens that we've asked the city manager, based on our review of the recording, to address certain concerns, or that the recording indicates that all policies and procedures were followed. At least that might give you the ability, if we had a very negative situation, to attempt to calm the citizenry down if that was necessary. Again, you wouldn't be able to say what was in the video, but at least you would have access to at least attempt to bring about peace and calm. I think that for the city of Winston-Salem, I would hope that the General Assembly is okay with this kind of tweak. I do believe if the council were interested in something more like a repeal, an entire repeal of the bill, I don't believe the General Assembly would do that, not the current makeup. But I would like to think that they would be amenable to what I consider to be reasonable tweaks, as I've just described. And it applies right now just to the city of Winston-Salem. I will share with you that it's my understanding that this whole bill legislation came about because there were a number of small cities and towns, a number of police departments, a number of sheriff's departments who really did not want the ability to make decisions with respect to the review and release of the dashboard and body-worn camera recordings. They wanted the court to make that decision. They didn't want to do it themselves. And so that's what the General Assembly responded to, as I understand it, and that's why we have the legislation.
Councilman Burton.
I understand the attempt to find some place of, grace on both sides and what can be passed in the General Assembly. But it'd be hard for me to support any type of legislation that did not go further than that, and that may be a difference from the rest of my colleagues. But I just think it's a piece of poor policy that I fundamentally believe that those type of documents are public records and should be treated as such, and to not allow public to have that type of insight on that, I think is poor policy. As in previous years and times, a district attorney at any point in time can request a judge to step into a process and restrict the viewing of those type of videos if in fact they believe that there was any type of potential impact on a case. And so there was already a method to restrict viewing if it was going to have impact on some type of case or proceedings that were going forward. And this, although it does allow others to view and brings more people into the process, I still think it's poor policy overall. But if that's what the majority of council members want to send forward, I just have to be on record and I just believe that it's poor policy.
May I ask, just to clarify something here? If, in fact, the council, the city manager, whoever gets to look at it, or look at the film, the video, if they say then this should go out to the public right now, and that would be allowed under this, or no?
What we would have to do, which is still under the current process, is petition the court for release to the public. You couldn't, on your own accord or initiative, do it. No, you can't do it. Even with the proposed tweak, you wouldn't be able to do it. But if that's desired, then we'd have to go to the court and ask the court to give you permission to do it.
Yeah. I guess for those at home in the audience that don't know, Winston-Salem was really one of those cities that was kind of, I thought proactive, but we kind of got labeled with the other cities as well that were trying to ensure that the public were informed and knowledgeable about incidents that could affect or has affected the quality of life of one or others. We felt that, I thought the policy and that we put together, the equipment that we purchased with taxpayer money, that we were being as transparent as we could be so that we wouldn't have a situation here in Winston-Salem that we couldn't settle as your elected officials. Unfortunately, because the climate of our country changed so fast as to media, social media, how these interactions were taking place across the country, people then began to feel like elected officials or staff should not have the ability to release the tape or the recordings. If you remember the incident we had last year, Mr. Page, we weren't able to release it as quickly as we wanted to or wanted the public to see it, but we knew from what staff and whatever were telling us that possibly we had done no wrong. But we couldn't prove it to anybody, and it kept stirring the pot of the anxiety of our citizens, stirring the pot of possible confrontational engagement with law enforcement and others, that we were bound and we sat back and we felt hopeless. We were very frustrated. When the tape finally was seen via TV, social media, the amount of outpouring respect or response by the people was then somehow everybody felt a little bit better about our police force. Everybody felt a little bit better about the city of Winston-Salem and its officials in trying to respond as quickly as we could. What it got us, along with some others here in the state and I guess across the country, you have those people that feel like if we feel that way, then that's a threat to the public safety of the whole body, and that we need to be stopped. So henceforth, legislation started to take place very rapidly to defeat this effort and to take away that freedom and responsibility that we felt as city elected officials. I feel like when that happened, I'm sure most of you saw, all of us were very angry. We were very upset. And it is what it's not what it is, but our hands were tied and we could do nothing about it because the bill was wrote and it was the law.
It's done very quickly.
Very quickly. I am in agreement with Councilmember Montgomery. I think this is, again, poor policy. But I also recognize that somehow or another we have to try to make bad things better, even bad policy. And this bad policy that was implemented, this is not the best, but it's better than what we had. I don't agree with some of the people that went quietly and the press basically did nothing about it, of our representatives and others who supported this bad legislation. And it's just recently now that people are beginning to question why wasn't there uproar about this from the public when this happened? So, in retrospect, City Attorney, I am going to support it, but I'm going to support it with some frustration and a matter of, right now, having something is better than nothing. Somebody's got to see if this one will get there through the legislature. And Winston may get it, and maybe some others will come on board with us as well. but I think this is better than nothing.
I certainly understand, and what I can commit to council is that if it appears that ultimately we can get more, I will certainly try to.
Definitely.
This is a start, and you're right, it was changed basically overnight.
Yep.
It literally happened the night before Town Hall Day.
Correct.
And when we met with our members of our delegation, they were kind of unaware of the language, and I kept saying, you all really need to look at this, but they had heard something different.
You did. You said.
And I think because they were hearing something different from what I was saying, they weren't really sure what was happening, and they were asked to vote very quickly on it, which is very unfortunate.
Yeah, I have a different take. As you have noted, the bill as it was adopted was a result of a couple of things. One was a terrible process. The previous session of the legislature was one of the least transparent in the modern history of our state. Major legislation was written and adopted with little to no public advance notice, and with either little understanding or misunderstanding by many members of the legislature. The decisions were closely held about how legislation was drafted and how it was processed by top leadership and many members of the General Assembly of both parties. I know were extremely frustrated. Some were not in a position to say so because of the politics of the legislature. You speak out, you get cut out under the previous session's leadership. But as a result, people were voting in unintended ignorance of the consequences and sometimes of the language itself. To sort of reiterate and expand on a couple of the points that Councilman Adams referenced in blunter terms. Winston-Salem was a leader in adopting body cams specifically for the purpose of, among other things, bolstering public confidence in our law enforcement agency. We think we've got a great police department, that our officers do a good job, and when we're allowed to demonstrate to that public, it increases community involvement, it boosts confidence in our officers, it helps keep them safe. This legislation, as adopted, unintentionally jeopardizes the lives and safety of our officers. It has to be fixed, and the sooner the better. Unfortunately, the proposals in this package I cannot support. I am afraid that they would take a bad situation and unintentionally, not because of your intent, but I think it would unintentionally make it worse. If it were adopted, it would increase the number of public officials who could see but not comment to the public on the content of the officials. I don't think that we should see it when we can't tell the public what's in it. I don't think our simply saying, hey, everything was done right, would effectively answer real public questions. I would encourage a different tack of taking the case to the legislature that by disallowing the responsible law enforcement agency head to use her or his discretion in determining when it's appropriate to release these records, I think that it jeopardizes the safety and lives of our officers, and that case needs to be made to the legislators. I think that there is a fair opportunity to make that case to a new General Assembly session, and we ought to try to do that. I don't think that while the reasoning is internally consistent, I don't think it would actually produce the effects that we're trying to expect. So I would urge us to hold this proposal and ask for broader reform of the legislature. If they turn us down, they turn us down.
Okay, if we ask for a repeal and sort of restoration of what was there before.
I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't do that because I don't think that the pre-existing status quo ante was satisfactory either. There was real debate about to what degree these were personnel records. I think that clarification is a good point. The major fundamental error that this legislation made was it said by default they are not public records either, and tied the hands of law enforcement agencies in determining that they needed to be released to show to the broader public. You can't even release them to people who are shown or directly impacted. You can only show it to them. It's so badly flawed that it needs to be overhauled. I wouldn't call it a repeal. I'd say some major changes made because we have now seen the problems created by the original legislation, and legislators, I think, in both parties of good faith can acknowledge that and fix errors without having to portray it as a repeal and going back to the admittedly difficult and unsatisfactory situation.
So in essence, to permit, I guess, the police chief and city council to release when it believes necessary the video?
I'd say let's define them as not as public record, but they can't be released under certain circumstances and detail what those circumstances are. And we don't have to write the bill for the legislature.
I understand, but what I'm trying to get away from is basically, cause I think saying they're public record is going to be almost dead on arrival. I just wondered if leaving them as records that are not public records but can be released if the police chief or the council decides that it's necessary. I wonder if that might be a better approach as opposed to saying they're public records.
I think that could be made to work. I don't think it would be as good as saying they're public record, but except under these circumstances and defining what the circumstances that took it out of the public record domain were. But
we can certainly do that and just see what happens. Jeff?
I think when we went down to the town hall day and we spoke to our delegation, I think it was pretty clear to them that we were unhappy with the bill. And I want to commend you for getting that information to us and allowing us to be prepared. And we were actually more prepared than our delegation was, which speaks ill to the process. I don't want to tilt at windmills here. If we can, Dan probably knows the legal side of it better than I do, but if this is an improvement over what we have now, I would support it. I know it's not what we want, but if it does gain us additional abilities, then I would support it. I think if we're going to challenge legislature, then we're not going to get anything that we want.
Why don't we do this? And I can write this up and have it for Monday. I guess the ultimate goal is to have it defined, the records defined as public record, and then preclude release if certain circumstances apply. And then if we don't actually achieve that, then perhaps this would be an alternative to what's in the book. But the ultimate goal is to have the General Assembly for the city of Winston-Salem define those records as public records and allow disclosure of the same and release of the same except if certain circumstances or criteria apply. Does that make sense?
Again, I think your reasoning is consistent. I would not be able to support that because I think it would still leave our department in a mess. I'd rather ask for what we think is the right way to go and recognize that there is a legislative compromise process. And if we come out with something that's actually better, we can say, well, it's a step in the right direction.
Better.
No, I mean, if they come out with something that's actually better than what we have now.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah. Again, I just want to reiterate that. Again, I know everybody, it's not, the way the world is right now, it is not Burger King, people. Everybody is not going to get it their way. We have got to figure out a way for compromise. If somebody can walk away with something respectable, something that I can live with until we can do better, until we all get out to vote and change things the way we think we want them. I can't sit here and say that if we do this, then we're not going to get anything and the world's going to come to an end. I can't sit here and say that what they've given us is okay with me, because it's not. Can I reasonably say that the state of circumstances of the leadership in Raleigh is going to say, oh yeah, give it to them? I'm down there all the time, probably more than anybody else in this room. I know that we now are at a point in our government that we have got to find a way that our citizens get something. It's not about us. You got to ask yourself, would you rather have a crisis situation where someone's family member, your family member, friend, has had an unfortunate encounter, our police, a citizen, and we don't want to know anything? When the Page incident happened, I wanted to know. And if it is that, like I said, if we did something that was not compliant, then we'll deal with that. And if we did something that was compassionate, then we'll deal with that. But I just can't not do nothing. And I know it's 8 of us, and it's a tie vote right here. But I am, like I said, the general climate of what we have to try to get some kind of compromise of something. I agree with Councilmember Montgomery, and Councilmember Bessie, that we can work on it. And City Attorney, you know I give you much, quote-unquote, props as to how you always seem to figure out what we need to be the best that we can be at helping our citizens. So I'm going to lean on you to help do this, because I know you're in contact with a lot of people in Raleigh as well, to help us try to get something out of this. I believe we can do that and still fight the good fight. And if the other cities decide they want to repeal it and the legislature flips and they say they want to repeal it as well, then we'll be a part of that too. But I do believe we need something, again, to protect not just our public safety officers, but the citizens of Winston-Salem. I'm not going to be a part of something that could be bad, period. Because right now, that's where we are.
Well, and just to, it looks like we're going to go 2 and 2 on this, because I must come down on the side of Mr. Bessie's argument that we know what came out of Raleigh is wrong, is bad. It's bad policy. And so I feel like you have to ask for that to be corrected. We may not, this may be a fallback, but I think maybe rewriting is in order here. Mr. Montgomery?
No, that was just it. I just wanted to reiterate, and again, Councilman Adams, I understand 110%. Just for community, and that's what this is about. It's about people and about how the community receives what happens, and the ability to trust in those whom they elect and in those whom they see in active service to them. And to do that requires a certain flexibility of that community to serve them. Attorney Carmen got that phone call from Senator Lowe after I was on the phone about an hour and a half with him, and she got a call that, I think, maybe that same evening from him in reference to that, just showing a dissatisfaction with that public policy. You know, I have to go back to when I first came on this council. One of the very first things that I asked colleagues to do was to put these cameras in this room, because I believe very much that open government and ability for citizens to see and hear and engage with what's happening makes for a better community when people know what's happening, know what's going on around them, and to engage with that. And that's all this is about. When people see it, sometimes there are blown conclusions that people make off of very short pieces of things, but at the end of the day, it's about making sure that there's confidence in the process. And, you know, I believe in asking, and if they shoot it back down to us, then, you know, hey, maybe. But I do think that from other parts of the community that there are going to be some other communities asking for some shifts and some changes with it. And maybe there's some things that come from across the state that end up on their desk that they're able to put something together that makes sense and make sure that there's confidence.
So what I'll try to do is to prepare a draft bill, not the purpose of a draft bill consistent with what Councilmember Betsy indicated, so that you'll have basically two versions, and you tell me on Monday which one you want to move forward.
Okay, all right. And let's see, you have more to tell us.
What-
Oh, I'm sorry.
I know Member McIntosh has been waiting to comment. I just have one. Oh, okay. I just have one more comment. I want to note that I think Councilmember Adams' point is correct, that, you know, some improvement for the public interest is better than simply, you know, being stubborn on principle. I have a good faith disagreement that this represents improvement. I think it just increases the number of people who could see it, but be barred from disclosing anything about it. And I don't think that improves the safety of our officers or increases public confidence. And you know, reasonable minds can disagree on it, but that is why I can't support asking for this specifically, because I don't think it represents, in effect, an improvement in the situation.
Thank you. And so we'll look at the two side by side. Okay.
Okay.
The next one is actually one of two resolutions. It starts on page 39, and this is basically a resolution that supports raising the age of the juvenile court jurisdiction to age 18. And it's basically for certain offenses where a person who age 18 and under who commits the offense will go through the juvenile justice system as opposed to the adult criminal system. There is a report, an internal report put out by a committee that's been looking at changing the current law as it relates to juvenile court, and hopefully you've had a chance to read it. It provides justifications for changing the age.
Right.
So that's what the resolution is, just supports changing the age of juvenile court jurisdiction to 18. So that's that resolution. And the next resolution, which is on page 69, basically supports the Equal Rights Amendment. The ERA was passed by Congress in 1972 and ratified by 35 of the 38 states, necessary to put it into the Constitution. But, of course, as you know, it's not in the Constitution. So this is a resolution that basically says, essentially, that we call on Congress to pass the ERA bills into law and to remove the time limit for ratification of the ERA so that the ratification shall be achieved upon the affirmative vote of 38 states. And that you call upon the General Assembly to pass into law a bill to ratify the ERA of the U.S. Constitution as proposed by Congress in 1972. And you may have some comments to make, because I think this may come from you, Councilmember White.
So,
And this is, I think, actually a copy of the resolution passed by Durham, I think.
Durham, I believe, yeah.
On that resolution, I want to note my credentials. I was marching in Washington for passage of ERA in 1979. So, you know, I strongly support the ERA. For me to be able to support this as a city resolution, I need to have it spelled out exactly how it impacts the city. And I think you can do that, but I need that in the resolution, please.
Okay, I put at the top, well, perhaps you want more, that the city supports it, and that our current population in terms of women is about 53%. So it would impact our current population. You want more than that?
Yeah, I'd like it tied specifically to city programs and ordinances.
Gotcha.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? I think that's the last, yeah.
And that's the last one.
Okay.
I'll make those changes before Monday.
Okay, and so we'll just pass it along to, I guess it's
Yeah,
the
just
next
those,
Monday or whatever it is.
General agenda
Okay.
for
All right.
the council.
Okay, is that okay with
Yes.
everyone? Very good. Thank you for all that. That's good work. G3.
Item G3, report on Peters Creek Community Initiative.
Good afternoon, Chairman Light and members of the committee. The city's received a request from the Peters Creek Community Initiative through the Shalom Project to help with a feasibility study for workforce housing development in the Peters Creek area. It's around the area of Peters Creek and Academy. So if you envision the old Dodge dealership there and the hotel, also the focal area that they're looking at. The Peters Creek Community Initiative is based on a collaboration of churches, neighborhood associations, businesses, nonprofits, joined for the purpose of looking at the revitalization of that Peters Creek Parkway community through both economic and community development. The overall objectives of the project would include helping to address a shortage of workforce housing in and near the downtown area, beautifying a gateway into the city, and serving as a catalyst for additional development along Peters Creek Parkway. This item this month is for informational purposes. If the committee supports the request, we'll bring it back next month for approval. Staff would recommend that we use the sweepstakes funding for those sweepstakes operations that were in the Ruka area, because we've used this funding for several other plans, including the Polo Cherry, the MLK Watertown, and the East End study. There's currently sufficient fund balance in that fund to cover the request for $15,000. Happy to answer any questions that you may have, and also there are representatives here from the initiative if you have questions of that.
Does staff think that the proposed format of the study and who would be doing the study are the best alternative?
Yes, what they'd be doing is bringing in national consultant from NDC that has extensive experience in doing this type of work, so I think it would be a good approach. And actually, our funds would be used in conjunction with other funds that they'd be raising from BB&T and the Charter community to help fund the project.
Good. That's the only thing I need to clarify, because the concept is a very strong one, and the location is in real need.
Dire need.
High quality, affordable housing and revitalization.
Both Lynn and Kelly are here if you would like to say a word. No?
Have you got presentation materials with you? I've seen it, but I think it would be good for the committee to see it.
Okay. Lynn, do you want?
So conceptually,
If you'll give your name and address for the record, please.
yeah,
Lynn.
my name's Lynn Brown, and I'm the executive.
Kelly, teach him.
Come on over here, Lynn.
I'm a rookie. Yeah, I'm Lynn Brown, the executive director of the Shalom Project.
And I'm Kelly Mitter. I'm 428 South Sunset Drive in Winston-Salem, and I'm the chair of PCCI.
Yes, go right ahead.
Okay. So we just have a concept board to give a little flavor to what the development might be. And I'd ask you not to overreact to the specifics.
Madam Chair, if I may, one of the reasons we asked folks to stand at the podium is because the camera, I think, is
Right.
focused
Okay.
on
So can
that.
you all see from here then?
Yeah.
So we can see, we want the folks that are watching to be able to see.
Okay. I'll do my best.
Want me to hold? Here, I'll hold.
Yeah.
How's that?
So here's Academy Street, and here's Peters Creek Parkway, and there's the creek itself that runs right across the front of the property. Today, the Budget Inn sits here, and there's a vacant Dodge dealership sitting here. The concept would be to remove those properties and develop as a core some affordable housing up the hill on the back of the property that runs up against Anson Street, which is up the hill toward Arden. The other part of the concept is to complement the housing with the supportive services of the Shalom Project, which is all about helping people in poverty build pathways out and to support them with services like food, clothing, a free medical clinic, and so forth. We also have the Circles program, which recruits families in poverty and equips them with training, helps their employability, helps their income, and ultimately the goal is to move them out of poverty permanently. So this would be a housing development supported by the Shalom Project services. We might have some retail frontage on Peters Creek to help generate revenue for the rest of the development. And then we'd love to have the creek be beautified and work with the city in extending the Salem Strollway down across this property and all the way into the city. And so the hope would be we'd be removing a really negative aspect along Peter Street and replacing it with something positive that might be a catalyst for commercial and residential upgrades that would help the quality of life for the residents there.
So, as you're aware, Peters Creek Community Initiative really worked the RUCA program a few years ago, brought a lot of development, particularly to the West Salem Shopping Center, other properties along the Parkway. And we're kind of at the point where this particular piece of property is impeding kind of any further progress in the area. I know our folks who serve on the committee with us that represent the shopping center, they bring tenants out to potentially bring more neighborhood-serving uses, grocery stores, that kind of thing. They get out of the car, they turn around, frankly, look at what's across the street, and determine that's not really where they want to be. And from the shopping centers and the businesses' perspective along the Parkway, they're really looking for more customers, essentially, along the Parkway. Our dream, of course, is to improve the economic viability of the Parkway and make it a safer, more pedestrian-oriented place for the residents of both West Salem and Ardmore and West End, for the neighboring neighborhoods that are represented by Peter Street Parkway. So this is very broadly conceptual. This is kind of just to get something on paper for people to react to. The request for the study is to really understand what the market can deliver to this space or deliver from this space. So this could look very different after we have done the analysis we need to know. But before we can go any further, we need to really understand what the potential for this site is. So whoever develops here is going to have to do this anyway. So,
Jeff?
Full disclosure, I was on the PCCI committee for, 3 or 4 years, so I haven't been on it for a while, but I've seen some of the renderings, and I'm fully supportive of this. It's an area of intense sort of focus and activity right now. PCCI has done a lot of work. NCDOT has looked at this and made proposals for changes after Business 40 reopens. Salem Parkway. And Shalom Group has looked at many other aspects around that area. So it's really transformative, but this is a pivotal property. It is such a negative.
It's the linchpin.
It is. And I got a closer view of some of the renderings of this project, and I think there's an opportunity once we get our consultant involved to increase the density here. I think it will be so successful because of its location that we can serve more people with it. So I would hope that we would build a more dense and more transit-oriented versus what I saw as a fairly suburban-looking style. So I think we can leverage it and make it even better. But I think overall it's a great place to serve people, to serve folks who right now can't afford to live in or around downtown. I mean, not just downtown prices are going up, but around downtown prices are going up too. And I think that serves that market very, very well. So thank you, guys. Sure.
And I guess I ought to say that I also was on the committee for a while.
There's a lot of disclosure that needs to happen here.
Derwin.
Just say I've seen and talked with and other groups who've come along the way looking at that property for other uses and things to happen there that would not touch the particular groups that the intention of the Shalom Project and others are to serve there. And so as this moves forward, I, amongst others, I'm very excited for the opportunity of how this touches some people in the community who are in need of that type of approach and work, as well as meeting the needs in and around that area community. For some of the things I've seen over the last few years in that area, some will want to come in and do some, again, adding to the luxury market rate housing in there, which there is a market for more of that, but to be able to see the property used where it, again, fits into the fabric of community and meeting a need, that's looking forward to it.
There's certainly demand for that as well.
Yeah.
And a couple things. One, I'm a contributor to Shalom Project, so if I need to disclose that, I'll disclose it.
You can get more, though.
You could all do more, right?
Look, I go sit on your block of ice every day.
That's true.
The other thing is, I think there's a combination of concepts that my colleague just mentioned. This to clean up the problem that is on that site now. It's such a high desirability location, I think, the potential that I think you could do a lot denser housing, transit-oriented housing. And I think you could probably make a kit that would be a leader in the community with a mixed income development with a lot of workforce housing but also a good element of sort of
Market
market
rate.
rate
Yep.
housing that would be a good example.
Yeah, we hope the study can kind of point out what that mix looks like.
Yeah, well, that's what you have to find out, because certainly, I mean, this, what is it, 5%, 10% workforce in the link apartments or wherever, that's not really addressing the problem, so.
And I have to say, I really like the fact that sweepstakes money can pay for this.
Yeah, that's sort of nice, isn't it?
One last before we-
Yeah, please.
You guys don't have site control yet, do you?
We don't.
Okay. I would want to know that we weren't going to pay for the study until we have site control.
Right.
Is that,
Yeah, and we sort of felt, there's sort of a chicken and egg thing there of knowing we can move forward with the study before we try and lock in some controls.
okay, thanks.
Good.
Anything else? Okay, all in,
Thank you very much.
Yeah, is there any reason structurally we can't recommend approval today?
Given the fact that we do have the extra week, we can easily prepare a resolution and have it in your package next Thursday for consideration on the 21st, I think that day.
I'd recommend that I'd move that we recommend that step.
Second.
go ahead. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Very good. Okay. Are we at G4 now?
Item G4, report on a federal lobbying contract.
Since 2005, the city has had a federal lobbying contract recently to ensure that we were receiving the best value for the investment. Staff did solicit requests for proposals and actually received four proposals were received. Those were from McGuire Woods, Pillsbury, Strategics, and the Ferguson Group. McGuire Woods also is the firm that has our state lobbying contract. Pillsbury actually currently is providing services to the city of Greensboro. Strategics actually provides our current services, and Leslie Mozingo has been our lobbyist since 2005. And then the Ferguson Group is providing services to the city of High Point. After receiving those four proposals, they were evaluated by a team consisting of myself, City Manager Lee Garrity, and City Attorney Angela Carmen, all independently reviewed the four proposals that we received. In your package of information today, you have in front of you a request or a copy of all four proposals that were received, as well as a summary of the combined average scores received from the staff's rating, which actually, out of the possible score of 100, Strategics rated the highest at 88, Ferguson Group at 87, Pillsbury at 80, McGuire Woods at 81, based on those were just staff's average combined ratings. And then I've also provided to you just a summary of some of the highlights of the four proposals that were received. At this point, what we're doing is basically seeking direction from the committee as to the next steps in the process that you all would like to see as we go forward with the actual issuing of a award of contract at some point going forward.
I think that's a good analysis of alternative proposals, given that our current representative in Washington actually scored highest, as well as the value of continuity of a professional relationship that I think is working well for us. My personal recommendation would be to go with the staff ranking here and continue that contract.
Mostly everybody knows I come out of a manufacturing background, And over the past 7 years, staff and my peers, you've all been exposed to that. I am a performance-based person. I have nothing personal against any of these. I'm just a business-minded person. The requests for the proposals, I think, came from some of us because I need to see performance. And I don't believe, like, I am a person that represents my constituents in the North Ward, that if you don't perform, if I don't see any results, then why am I going to keep using the same service? What would it hurt? The contract is renewable. Is it renewable per year? And the way the data came to us, it's okay. I mean, it's a good stab at it, staff. I appreciate that. But I still believe, even at the end of the day, the persons that are ultimately responsible to make the decision, as we all know, is council. And I just want the other council members to understand that even when I requested that we get a state legislative lobbyist, I do know some of the council didn't think that was a good idea either. But the way, again, government is working, we need real-time information to be able to respond accordingly. And I think we will see over the next 6 months to a year, and we've already seen some positive outcomes of that relationship. I think that staff we need to have public, just like when we got McGuire, we need a presentation, whether every council member wants to be there. We can set it up. Everybody needs to have an opportunity to come before us to present their case. I also would like to see, I know it's a lot of data in here for council, but then I'm retired. I got time to read everything. I need you to give us, my peers and I, a breakdown of financial performance. And based on that, I do understand that we've had strategies, or the company owner who was with Ferguson before, and I know that kind of rolls over into that. But I need to see what we've got. Like, some of them gave us their performer information for the past 3 years. I'd like to see the past, again, 7 years, because that's how long I've been here. I think it doesn't hurt us, again, to look at, just like we do with other contracts. We need to be thinking performance-based. Again, if the council decides that they want to stay with strategists, then that's their prerogative to do that. But I am going to be always going forward, just like I have been recently. I need performance, and I need to see it on a regular basis, just like with everybody else. And right now, I haven't seen anything in a while. In the information given to us, it's a replay of what I've been seeing over and over and over again. And I know there's concern with some council members that, well, they represent Greensboro, well, they represent High Point, well, we'll be competing. No, this is a deal of we're paying for a service. Just like we give water to everybody in the city, we used to sell water to other cities. It is not a competing thing like that. They would be, whoever it is, contracted to Winston, going after the goals that we set, that we want to see. And again, I can't see us stand on this course if the data is telling us we might just need to go look at somebody else.
Can I ask a question for clarification purposes?
Yes.
Are you asking for, I guess, special meetings to be scheduled?
Correct.
By council, whoever wants to be there?
Correct.
Can hear a presentation from all four?
Correct.
Okay. I guess the question.
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I've been involved with the lobbying effort ever since I've been mayor, and even before I was mayor on the staff side of it. And I've seen firsthand how it works. And I've seen firsthand the importance of relationships. And our current firm has tremendous relationships in D.C. In fact, our staff is called on by their staff people to help them draft legislation that we're after there. We also talk a lot about hiring local, and this is basically a local firm.
I know we hired McGuire Woods to do our state legislation. I wasn't totally happy with that, as the attorney knows, because we do have two good firms here in Winston-Salem that do state lobbying, and so I was a little concerned that we stepped out of our own statements of hiring local. Secondly, this firm has brought in over $30 million over the past 11 years, I believe it was, and they have this tremendous relationships they build up between the city staff, council members, and others, and they have just expanded their kind of cadre of experts by adding two other individuals. One I know very well, Deborah Bryant, who worked with Governor Hunt and others in the state level, but also has worked at the federal level and has great connections there. So it's almost like we're taking that, it's not even the same firm, it's an expanded firm with expanded expertise. So I certainly feel strongly that an independent rating by staff shows that this firm rated the highest, and I don't really see any need to change.
Mr. Montgomery.
I think all the comments so far have been duly noted. And when we look at all of the information we have, for me, and I didn't bring we had two blue books this week. I didn't bring my blue book with me. But with that, I think it is important to understand with a level of detail what type of objectivity and subjectivity went into the rating and the scoring pieces here. Just to be clear on the total scoring numbers, and I know some of that's in there, but just to be clear on, that methodology used to come up with those numbers and the scoring, and how much of that was subjective. I don't disagree with the fact that relationships are important, and that I think relationships are a hallmark of doing a lot of business and a lot of different things. You don't have relationships, you can't do a whole lot of stuff. But in the same sense, I think it is important and imperative in the sense of what's the product, what do we get out of those relationships for the citizens, and how is that tied together, knowing that we have different climates that change in D.C. and around, and so how we're maneuvering within those spaces in order to still find that benefit for the city of Winston-Salem, and what type of best practices are we seeing in our peer communities that are allowing them success in certain things, but not allowing us to see some of the same success. And so what are those differences? And I think it's important for us to ask those questions, and then if we remain with the same group, to understand those things and what things need to happen differently to ensure that, are we doing all things right? What are the challenges there? We submitted for these things or looked at this, what's different, and is there something that is provided by any of these other groups that could have better outcomes for citizens? So I think all of that's been said is important for us to take into consideration. That at the end of the day, I think that there is a big piece in terms of what are we getting for citizens, the type of legislation that we're working through, how is that, having a dividend payment back to our citizens as a whole. And if that doesn't happen, what do we understand as the reasons for that not happening, and what shifts with that? And sometimes it's not always getting a new car. Sometimes it's making a tune-up. It's just seeing what those things are to make sure that we are hitting those marks, and if necessary, that we make the proper changes that we need to make within the process. Because at the end of the day, folks, if they ask, what have you done for me lately? Same thing they ask us as elected officials.
Absolutely.
What have you done for me lately in terms of how do we continue to get the legislation, program support, financial support for projects that we're looking for our constituents. At the end of the day, that's what it's about.
I don't know if y'all have ever moved your business's banking from one bank to another, but I look at that as a similar analogy to what we're talking about here. When you have to take your business from one bank to another, you got to explain to that new bank what your business is, and there's a cost to that. There's a real cost in efficiency and downtime. And if you've got a banker that understands what you do, then it just makes things much more seamless. I know, we've got a shark in Washington. I want that shark to be our shark. I don't want to share that with other people. We as elected officials, we struggle with having to balance out other viewpoints. But I don't want that in my lobbyists. I want my lobbyists just to have my viewpoint in mind and not have competing voices in her ear or their ear from other communities, other entities. You know, I think one of the things I really value about our current firm is their grant writing ability. I think they do a very good job of bringing us money. I don't think that we have, from what I've seen of the other firms, I don't believe that we have that same level of ability there. So I'm not looking to change horses.
Dan.
Yeah, I think there's some good questions that have been raised by everyone's comments. One thing I would note is that we need to have reasonable expectations in terms of financial return performance. We can't blame a lobbying firm either at the state or the federal government for political circumstances that overwhelm anyone's capabilities. I don't blame McGuire Woods for the terrible body camera law that we got out of the General Assembly this past session, and I don't think we can blame our current representation in Washington for the congressional decision to abolish earmarks, or for the fact that there are some of the other communities in North Carolina that have far more effective representation in Washington than we currently do, at the congressional level. So, if we're going to be real, let's be real about that.
Yes. I guess my point, I guess what I'm trying to communicate is, I understand everybody, we have a relationship. But in Councilmember McIntosh's analogy about the bank, I don't want to throw one of the big banks under the bus, but if you're not performing, again, whatever it is services that I'm expecting as a customer, from where I come from, that means, again, we need to have the corrective preventive actions in place and your goals, just like we give appraisal performance reviews to our staff, of what our expectations are. We cannot blame anyone for what has transpired. I keep going back. The government has changed. It will never be the way it used to be 7 years ago, yesterday. It's gone. But we need to be in place for people to understand that I am of the adage that as I move forward, I need to see results. And if other cities comparable to my city are able to get support, grants, federal whatever, I'm expecting Winston to get something. I don't see us getting as what we want every day, our Burger King. But occasionally those things that matter to some of the members of this community and the people we're elected by, if I can't get help on the number 1, 2, 3 issues in my community, this is what has caused what we got going on now. If I got to continue to walk through or ride through my community every day, and there is hunger, and there are no grocery stores, and there's no produce, and there are no co-ops, and I get this thing of, well, we got people working on it, but I'm paying people to help me when Greensboro and High Point and others in Durham are getting those services. Where is it that we're missing it? If I can't help eradicate poverty with some type of jobs or something in my community, and I see the others are getting it, and we talk about it, even when we go to Pittsburgh this week, my peers will be telling me about their successes, and I can't say anything. When we talk about our public safety, yes, we got the grants for everything, but that's one piece of the puzzle that's actually affected by poverty, as we all know. So all I'm looking for, and I may be wrong on this, and I respect everybody's opinion and how you feel on the council about local and whatever. Well, I'm of the adage, if local is not bringing it, then local doesn't work for me. And I'll stand up and tell my constituents that. I'm just asking, just like you did, Councilmember Bessie and others, let's look at this logically by data and process, and what are the inputs and what are the outcomes. And if all we're expecting is we get what we get, if we get nothing, then if the council majority wants that, then that's fine. But I won't be happy with that.
I hear that, and I would just say, if you'll send around the specifics of the case examples you're thinking of, we can examine them.
Thank you.
Because I would be surprised to find something in there that I can't explain with factors independent of our hired firm in Washington.
Okay.
How, did you have something else to say?
Yes, I just said that this will be very, very important moving forward to have effective representation in Washington, D.C. And so this decision is very important, I think, to ensure that, you know, we can find paths and really to sit even with our congresswoman to really make those cases as much as possible, understanding their fundamental values and how we work there to say, okay, these are the things that are important to us in this community. As the expanded district has been done, I don't know if that helps us any with our leverage there, but I think we have to really look at all of those pieces, and as that changes, and with the demographics that exist there, to do anything, we will have to have some effective folks there to accomplish some things.
May have to make some changes at that level first.
Okay. What is the pleasure of the committee?
Are you asking for the student tonight?
Motion to...
Why don't we hold it over and get more data and, you know, for the students?
And Madam Chair, I'd also like to, for whatever it's worth, I don't know. I don't see our contract ending. I mean, are we still with the present contract until when? Does it run out December 31st?
It does. So I guess the question becomes, how critical is it, because you do have a contract that expires December the 31st with the new Congress and president being elected and going in January. You probably want to have something in place. You're going to, council will be there in March.
We'll be fine.
For NLC. So you just need time to put an agenda together.
Yes, the attorney.
I was just going to ask you, Councilmember Adams had mentioned earlier, maybe presentations from the floor. I was just wondering, is that something you all want us to try to set up, or just let me know?
Chair Light, I would like to see that set up, and in light of us bringing on a new council member, I'd like for him to be a part of this discussion going forward. So if we could try to set something up, and somewhere after, you know, because I remember you guys brought us in as council member elects to give us information before we were actually sworn in. And I would like for maybe if we, however we can fix it, so Councilmember-elect Larson can be a part of the discussion, and we can vote on it, whether we put it on the agenda for the first item or whatever at that meeting that we have. Information, and will we do it the third Monday in December? Is that okay?
We are going to have 2 meetings in December, then good.
Correct.
Okay, very good.
Yes.
Oh, well,
Yeah.
if that may make my point moot in the sense that if it would come during that time frame, because I was trying to figure out whether or not, again, looking at the timing and expiration of existing contract, if there was something there that allowed staff, if in fact the council had not made a decision to make whatever extension, and whether or not the current contractor is willing to extend beyond a certain time without a longer contract, to make sure that we have no lapse in representation in there.
Certainly.
I'm sure we could do that.
As part of the information that we get to make this decision, I'd like to know that if on specific cases where other communities got money and we didn't, whether the delegation and the representation in Washington had direct influence on those decisions, i.e.
Our representation as
Well,
opposed
yeah,
to Raleigh or wherever.
Relations.
Yeah. Okay, well, we'll hold this until and we can set
So
something.
I'll just clarify, so we're going to try to schedule a special meeting, invite all 4 of them to come, and specifically show us the data of what they did,
For-
what return they had, and if they didn't get it, why, right?
Sounds
We
good.
were trying to do this before the third Monday meeting, December, I guess, the 19th and,
Okay, all right.
We'll figure it out.
Is there any reason we can't just
Okay,
do it
so
at
we're
our
holding
next
this
committee
one
meeting?
for further work. Okay,
you talking about the next committee meeting, I guess that would be December 13th, is that what you're talking about, trying to do it then? We can if you want to do it then.
We'll figure it out and get back with
okay,
y'all. So
all right,
Okay.
okay,
on the
all
fly.
right, sounds good. G5,
Item G5, presentation regarding Star Community Leadership Program.
Good afternoon. My name is Wendell from the Sustainability Office. Good afternoon, council members, mayor, and committee members. What I want to talk about today is give you a quick overview of a study we're doing, and it's through Star Communities, which is basically the sustainability tools for assessing and rating communities. And what I like to always do is start out when I'm talking about Star is that it's not a ranking system. It's a rating system to see how we're looking internal, to see how we're doing and how we're going along. And basically what this is a framework, and a very comprehensive framework, of about 524 points of analysis that we're doing over this year of our city and community and around us and our co-partners. It basically leads to a certification, what's either known as a 3-star, 4-star, or 5-star. Currently in North Carolina, there is only one star community, and that is Raleigh. It's a 4-star community, and there is one other community, or 2 other communities that are affiliated, Rockingham County and also Charlotte. They are not going through the certification program as we are. And this is a little bit hard to read, but this is basically kind of give you an idea of why we chose STAR. Basically because it actually has a very good foothold into what's going on in communities around the United States and Canada. As you can see, as a STAR communities involved, we've got over almost 21 million people being analyzed at this point about what's going on. From the smallest city of Charles City, Iowa, of 7,600, to Houston with a population over 2 million. We're also looking at the average community size, 212. Fits right in our pocket and right in our home. Also, at this point, there's 51 certified cities and 3 certified counties. And again, it goes to 35 states and the District of Columbia as well. Now, to keep this short, I'll just go through a few of these. These are the benefits that we see that impact our city by going through this program. It gives us actually, and as this council member Adams said before, gives us a matrix and tracking performance ability that we can go in and say, after this year of study, we're going to have metrics to look at to say where we want to move forward as a city from either from a policy standpoint, a funding standpoint, or so on. It also catalyzes our local action and working with our stakeholders locally and decision making as well. It can strengthen our policies, our programs, and services that we offer today by evaluating what they're really looking like compared to these performance indices. Also, we're looking to improve our regional coordination. This not only looks at our partners being within the city, but we're going to the county as well, the state as well, the federal indicators as well. So this whole system is made up comprehensively through more than just local city indicators, but we're utilizing national indicators as well to look at our city. And as well, and following on, we're hoping to make sure to garner some national recognition as well for us moving forward in sustainability and the resilience of our city. Our timeline started back in January. I was made aware of a grant opportunity looking at something that was bigger than we normally looked at. When I first got here, we looked at just greenhouse gas emissions, and we've been concentrating on our city infrastructure and our buildings and how we can better and make smaller our footprint. Well, this here offers a lot larger perspective, one that I think that we need. Basically, in February, we were selected as one of just 4 cities in the country that have put in their grants. My understanding is 25 cities were were going for this money at that time and becoming part of this program. We were one of Dallas, Ann Arbor, and Pinecrest, Florida. And then in the March, we got our training, and then we got ourselves ready to move forward. We talked to our city departments, each of who we had to work with. What's important here to understand is the training that we went through is provided by an actual STAR community advisor. That's one part of this program that we get that no one else gets by being selected as one of these 4 cities. We have this advisor available to us. We've met with them. They've come here, and we've actually had a workshop with them, which further moves us on into July, that we had at Wake Forest University. Several of you were there during that time. As you noticed, we had a full house. We were lucky enough to make sure that a lot of people were contacted that we could reach out to, and many of them made it to that day. And we had some very good turnover and talk about that. So where are we in this process at this point in time? Well, we got organized. We received our training. We're now gathering that data, and there's a lot of data, as I mentioned. Currently, and we are quite ahead of schedule, we're about 84% of collecting that data, which is 2 people in my department at this point collecting that data and working with all internal stakeholders, along with city stakeholders, economic development stakeholders, nonprofits, for-profit stakeholders throughout the city. We'll step from there and turn in our evaluation to the STAR community people. They will evaluate our process for 30 days, provide it back to us, giving us guidance to say, are you sure you didn't miss something? Are you sure there isn't something you're doing that we're not getting here? And they will give us guidance on how to move forward for the final certification and final verification. If we are selected as a 3-star or above, that will be good for 3 years. The complication, not complication, I should say the difficulty of this certification this time is we're on an older version, 1.2. Here is where you either get the points or you don't get the points. They are now releasing version 2.0, which where in many areas we would get partial points because we are doing a lot of these things that they're asking. We're just not doing all they're asking in these first 2 versions. So basically the framework. As we look at it, and I'll tell you what I'll do is I'll put this up. It gives a little more guidance. These are the 7 goal areas, and you'll see how broad they are, going from the built environment, climate and energy, economic and jobs, education, arts and community, equity and empowerment, health and safety, and natural systems. Now, that in itself is a wide branch that we've not looked at. And that's what our goal's been in the sustainability office, is make this more than just about greenhouse gases. Make this more about social justice, about our jobs in our community, about our built environment in our community. So we have finally found a format for that and a way to go through that. And so we're moving ahead today with that. And what's interesting is normally we talk about actions before outcomes. In this instance, our action is actually the study. Our outcomes are those items that will come out in the results we get from what we found in our study. To give you an example of that, we do a lot of trending in this study. And so we're looking at waste minimization. As you can see from 2000, 2005 to 2016, as an example, you would trend that upward as a waste minimization, but actually would trend that downward from where you were as a high to a low of your baseline. So we're looking to do that today with our own recycling program today. Another one is a threshold outcome that we do in arts and culture. This is led by the American Arts Index. This is one of those national indicators I was speaking about. They're looking for a community to represent at least 5% share of all businesses in the county to be demonstrated through creative industries. Well, I can tell you right now, we don't meet that. We're at about 3.8, 3.9%, which is a very, very good start. But I think at this time, to think about 5% of all business being creative is a very tough and a high bar to hit. And I think we're working towards them pretty close to that now. And then we could even map out some of our outcomes, such as our green vehicles, our different type of alternative vehicles as well. We see that, and I'll just use the maps in this case. When we looked at 2011, how many electric vehicles were in Forsyth County cities, we had 0. Now we have registered over 103, and that was back in 2015. Now we are fighting an uphill battle with the low cost of fossil fuels, but I think what we've seen was in the last 2 months, the breakdowns in the pipelines proved to us that wow, look at those people in electric vehicles going to work while we're all standing in line for our gas. So we have tools like this to use. We're working with Map for Sight to pull these out and look at them even more in research and in detail. Some of our local actions, well, they might come out of STAR looking at saying, is there more education outreach we could do? I believe there always is. There's plan development, there's policy, code adjustments. If we talk about code adjustments, that might be blended solar. Maybe we'll be looking at some kind of solar adjustments that we want to make, since we are working with the solar folks at the spark industry right now at the Department of Energy. Also, we're looking at better, better practices improvements, inventory assessment surveys. We're going to get all of this from this study alone. That's going to be a wealth of knowledge I hope to bring to you for you to make decisions as we go forward. And also in other local actions, again, waste minimization. We have a waste management plan. We're utilizing it. We're putting it in full. We are making progress in that. I think you've seen our sanitation results in our recycle program. They've been very well taken and done by the city. We're now using I believe it's the 90-gallon drums instead of the 15-gallon size. And a lot of people are filling those. And that is even something that we should be proud of. And again, this came out of the school system from our kids in the middle school. So I think education is a key part here. We got our adults today who were in middle school at a time when the points of recycling were made. And now look at this. Now we actually think of it every day when we're doing our normal day living. And then using STAR to improve our own community. Last, as you see, the park that we're working on in the future and coming soon. The reason the community joined STAR is to align our local plans, our regional plans, and, as you were talking tonight, some of our state plans, if we can get things going our way in a way of looking at the vision of the future. Strengthening our partnerships. We have stakeholders. We will be taking this study, once we review it, out to the stakeholders of the public. We will take all the information we gather and get their input from this, and to say, what areas are they most interested in seeing what we can do? Is it social justice? Is it food deserts? Is it transportation choices? Those type of items. So as you see, we have a whole item list here that we can use for the reason we want to move forward in the joining of STAR. I think we got a great opportunity here that STAR gave us with the opportunity of selecting Winston-Salem as one of the 4 cities for this year's study. And I'll take any questions.
Any questions?
Comment? Just as you said, when you had the community forum at Wake Forest, I don't think you realized is all those people going to show up like that. And what it shows again about Winston-Salem, we care about our communities. And the people that were there were the leadership that's to help implement this strategy. As I've told you before, I'm behind you in your organization 100%. I used to serve on the first sustainability commission that the council implemented back in '89 or, no, wasn't that far ago, was it? Sure. 09, 08, 07, somewhere along in there. But I appreciate everything that you guys are doing to bring us to this level. I don't think a lot of people realize that if we do this, it's going to, again, promote economic development and other businesses that are creative businesses or technology businesses. They look for these types of ratings as to whether they want to come or relocate their business to your town. So again, I'm looking forward to everything that you're going to bring us.
Congratulations on being one of the 4.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, this is a presentation, and we'll await further developments. Okay. G6.
Item G6, report on on-street handicap parking in Winston-Salem.
Greg, are you going to do this? Okay.
Madam Chairman, members of the committee, the city has received a request to designate specific parking spaces on street for handicapped parkers. Traditionally, we have rejected those type of requests for several reasons. Well, 2 primary reasons. The first is that all parking on street is available for handicapped parkers at no time limit. Under state statute, the city is not allowed to restrict the time that a handicapped placarded vehicle is allowed to park in a on-street metered space. The second reason is we have requests for these kind of specialized or pre-assigned spaces from a number of other
groups such as police department, sheriff's department, the folks at the federal building, et cetera. So in the past, we've said it wouldn't be fair to treat one group differently than other groups are, especially when the group that's being requested has the ability to have, under state statute, the ability to stay in a parking space for an unlimited amount of time. The specific request came from a citizen who was interested in being able to park at some of the downtown nighttime vigils, the Stevens Center specifically, as I recall. And what we analyzed in that situation is, because that's in very close proximity to a downtown residential property, then the state statute would allow anyone who has a handicap placard and lives in a residential building downtown to stay there an indefinite period of time. So when the statute says that you can stay unrestricted, it's not saying that you can stay all day. It's saying you can stay there as long as you want, multiple days if necessary, if you desire. So those are the reasons why we have traditionally rejected the request. As we analyzed this specific request, we started looking at some of the logistical issues associated with handicap parking being designated on the street. And one of them I just alluded to as an operational problem. But the other is a physical restriction that handicap parking in parking lots, because those vehicles are parking side by side, those spaces are 9 feet wide, and if you're accommodating handicap vans, there's a 5-foot landing area for the wheelchair ramp coming out of the side of the handicap van. When you're talking about on-street spaces, they are typically 7 to 7.5 feet wide, so much less width to work with. That also means that the vehicle is opening its door against the moving lane of traffic. And if that operation takes a significant amount of time, there's an increased risk for safety for the people who are getting into that vehicle or getting out of that vehicle, as well as the adjacent traffic traveling past the vehicle. So there are some operational issues that would be more of a problem with more handicap parking being designated, or with any handicap parking being specifically designated on the street that we want to bring to your attention. Now, if in fact the council decided to do something to address the potential of abuse by folks who might have a handicap placard and wish to leave their vehicle there for multiple days, the only solution that we have been able to identify for that would be to implement pay stations at the locations where you would want to put handicap parking. That way, they would have to pay for the amount of time they stay. And the statute, excuse me, the statute, as I said earlier, requires us to provide unlimited time, but it does not obligate us to provide that for free. As a matter of practice, we provide that for free at all parking meters, because it would be inconvenient to require handicapped individuals to go back to their vehicles and feed a meter every so often. But because pay stations allow you to buy up to an entire day's worth of time at one time, we do require everyone who parks at one, regardless of whether they have a handicap placard or not, to pay at pay station. I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Are there any questions before we have a guest who actually brought this to my attention that I'd like to have speak?
Just one. You're talking about the loading operation being being hazardous, but it wouldn't typically the loading take place on the other side, on the sidewalk side in most cases.
If the driver, yes, sir.
Right. Driver gets out, comes around. Yeah.
Mrs. Dennis, would you like to come address the... Well, that's for hopefully for us to ask.
Mr. Turner, I'm glad to see you in person. I'm a little slow.
That's okay.
If you will provide your name and address for the record, Nancy.
My name is Nancy Dennis, and I live downtown, 27101, off of Marshall Street. Molly is my soon-to-be past councilwoman, and I'm very happy with our new one, but I'm happy to be here. I'm going to respond a lot to what Mr. Turner said. The reason I'm here today, I brought this to Molly's attention about 5 years ago, and her response was, you can park handicap anywhere you hang your tag, but that's a secret. Nobody knows about it. There are no signs anywhere. The Business Bureau doesn't know about it. So there is really zero municipal handicap parking. And the meters that he's talking about, which I have used at the government center when we voted, is no different than any other. Because with handicap parking, you have to have a cut curb. It's no big deal, but you just have to have a cut curb. And the reason I tell you I am here because of that cut curb is on the 16th of September of this year, while my husband, who's right here, was letting me out of the car in front of Aperture, which is in the middle of the block. And I am negotiating the curb, an opened car door, and a guy behind me with both hands on his steering wheel, like, you know, what is this woman doing? I lost my balance, fell back, unimpeded. It closed down 4th Street, fire engines, ambulances, and I ended up with a concussion, which I am getting over, fortunately. It didn't kill me, so I guess it'll make me stronger. But that, I knew if I had a cut curb and handicap parking, that would not have happened. And I have many friends who have MS, I have MS, who I used to meet downtown. One, Irene Burton, who is a very active person, young woman. She's younger than I am. She has you might see her, a 007 car, a white PP Cruiser. She comes in, she pushes a button, the whole side of the car comes up.
Butterfly.
A ramp comes out, she rolls in, she drives away. Because of changes in the downtown parking lot, which is on Cherry Street, then there is not a human being in that little, you have to, it's a mechanical thing. I can't use it because having MS, I can walk some far, but I have an electric scooter, which is in the back, which I came in on. But Irene cannot use the handicap parking because she cannot get to the thing to pull the ticket. And because of the way her car's configured, she can't open the door, and because of her balance, my balance is terrible, she would fall out of the car. So she no longer can meet me at Camino for coffee. She can't come downtown. And so there are a lot of what it is doing is preventing those of us who have difficulty walking from having access to downtown. Or on Trade Street, there is a handicapped place right beside the Piedmont Crafts. But Stimmel Associates owns that property, and they have very nicely for them put a, what do you call it, a sign that says this parking is for private use only. It's the only handicapped place down there. Now, I will admit to you, I use it. When I'm going to the pit, I use it. But my fall is what made me know that we should not have a city where there is zero handicap parking on municipal streets. Greensboro has it. I called and spoke with a girl named Rebecca Williams. She's with the Southeastern ADA Center, was with the Justice Department. And she talked to me about this incredible handicap parking, on-street parking, that Charlotte has just done in the Dilworth community and another community. I know our city has gone to Greenville, South Carolina, is the gold standard. It's where Jason Field went. They all went down to study Greenville. I have a daughter and son-in-law that teach at Clemson. I was in Greenville last weekend. They have a Stevens Center at one end. They have a hotel at the other end. They have beautiful handicap parking at every single cross street. So when we drive in, I find there are enough. I've never not found one. And it makes the accessibility is what those of us who have trouble walking, we really need. And to deal from abuse rather than need is where Mr. Turner and I strongly disagree. When he says there'll be abuse, if it isn't here, you can't abuse it. So we don't have it. To me, he's got people running up and down giving parking tickets because I take classes at the Sawtooth Center. And thanks to Molly, I know I can hang my tag. But he's got plenty of people riding up and down giving parking tickets. And if somebody's parked in a handicapped place and doesn't have a tag hanging, then the city can collect $250. So, I mean, you know, it's the same thing as giving a parking ticket. I really think we want other people from other communities to come. I travel all over the country, all over the world. I take my tag. In Santa Fe, on the city square, at every corner, there are 4 handicapped. This is municipal. This is not a parking deck. And they have cut curbs at every one. In Clemson, South Carolina, if you don't hang your tag and you park there, the fine is $1,000. And I will see, speaking to abuse, maybe at parking malls, you know, at the Haynes Mall you might see, but I've had MS for 40 years, and I've had handicap, I've taught at the medical school for 30. And they finally made me get a handicap tag. I kept saying, no, I don't want one. And said, we'll put some parking places in for you. And so I've had a tag for a long time. And I rarely see abuse. And how do you know when somebody gets out of a car and has a tag? How do you know? You have to trust that they have, because the doctor has to sign for it. And to talk about whether they expire, they do expire. I don't know whether it's 5 years or 10 years. But my MS never expires. So I'm going to need a handicap all the time.
Right.
Now, I live downtown, and my cart is wonderful. So I drive my little cart on the street from home to the Sawtooth, to Camino, up to Trade Street. And so I'm accessible. But for people like Irene, we are excluding, I think it's like 1 in 5 Americans have some sort of walking problem. And with the Stevens Center, so all of the Stevens Center, Haynes Brands, there's no cut curbs. And with the Stevens Center, if you go down there and watch people coming, they put those awful cones out there. But you still have to stop in the middle of the street for my husband to let me out, because police cars park on every corner. So I say, get the police cars off of the corner, turn those 4 at every cross street, turn those into handicapped spaces, and cut the curbs, put a sign, and when people abuse it, give them a ticket and collect the money. I feel so passionate about this. And so whatever I could do, Greensboro has it, Charlotte, I think, and I don't have any proof, that we may be the only city in Winston that does not have, in North Carolina, that does not have handicap parking.
Very eloquently said. Thank you. Edie.
You my new shero.
What?
You're my new shero.
Well, I tell you, I really, I live downtown. I love downtown. I take classes at the Sawtooth, and when I see people who park in a handicap, I have sheets of paper this size, and it says, "You forgot to hang your tag." Often, I have it. You forgot to hang your tag. If you do not have a tag, please do not park in the handicap parking. But the city could collect $250.
Heck, we could
I
collect
think
more
that
than that.
your perseverance is noteworthy. You have MS, I have lupus. And there are times when I can't walk. Everybody knows that basically now. I catch the elevator. I get tired real quick and my limbs hurt, my legs hurt. When I was really, really sick, and my sisters would have to take me to the doctors or to the wherever, there was always the issue that we don't have a tag, and they always get on me. You need a tag. I'm like you. I was like, I don't need a tag. I can do this.
I fought it.
Yeah. But as I get older, I know I'll need a tag. But I think I agree with you, anything that we can do to be inclusive of our citizens and people that come to this town, because us older people, we are getting older, and to tell you the truth, you don't have to have a chronic illness to know how great a cut curve is, versus you trying to raise a limb.
Well, this is why I have the phone.
Yeah, they won't to get the
negotiate
yeah,
the curb
yeah,
and the car.
yeah,
The guy who was.
yeah. I've fallen. I have, because I couldn't get my knee and legs to go up to get on the curb. But I would hope that staff and us and the council will move forward. We're a city that prides ourselves on the Mayor's Commission on Disabilities and things. I would hope that we would move forward with this. I agree with you. I think we need to do it.
I'm going to be like a dog on a bone about this.
Go ahead, chew.
Because I love this city. I've lived here 50 years, and I go ride my cart down to Old Salem. Three ways or another, they have a lot of handicapped spaces, but no cut curbs.
Yeah,
so I'm working on them too.
Good on you.
But I really, I would just read you one thing that Irene wrote. She said, I used to be able to park. She's my one in the 007 car. I hope you see it one day. It's an incredible experience. I used to be able to park in the parking garage, but a few years ago they took the person out of the booth and put in a machine. For a lot of women, you need to be able to open your door and reach out. I can't open the door because of the ramp in her car, nor can I lean with my lack of balance. I stopped going downtown because I cannot park. So.
Okay, Derwin, you wanted to ask something?
Well, just a comment, if it's...
Yeah, please.
Well, one, I thank you very much for coming. Was that the 17th of September?
Yes. Were you down there?
I was actually on my way to the classic, Winston-Salem Classic ball dinner at the convention center, and saw the fire trucks and saw the ambulance there, and the firefighters who were there were also coming to the event as well, and shared that someone had fallen. And so I did see that. I passed that on my way there. And also to share that it was Humphrey who said, the moral test of government is how they treat those who are in the dawn of life, the children, how they treat those who are in the twilight of life, the elderly, and how they treat those who are in the shadows, the sick, the poor, and needy, and the handicapped. And I think that it is a moral obligation of ours to make sure that we do what we must as a community. And I know where we have in policies and procedures and things that we look at, but I think that sometimes we do need to step back and readdress some of the things that we have in policies in place to make sure that we are attending to the needs of individuals. The presentation done in one of the conferences we've attended, and they said when you help the least of those, everyone benefits. The cuts you have in curbs on sidewalks that are there to make sure that sidewalks are ADA accessible, everybody benefits. because you don't have to step up on the curb. Ever seen a mother pushing a stroller? And she benefits because it is accessible for individuals who can't walk properly. And so when we do those things for individuals who are needy and are challenged, it pays dividends for the rest of our community. And we would not have the community we have if it were not for those others who participate. And so I'm interested in terms of a way that we may able to do that, and understanding how that is impactful, and understanding there is limited parking and on-street parking in downtown, and I know that would be a question, and others won't have a whole lot of input in what that would look like. But I think we lose nothing by moving to really examine that.
Yeah.
Just very quickly, thank you for coming and bringing this to us. We want everybody downtown.
What?
We want everybody downtown, and we want people to bring their money downtown and spend money downtown and live downtown. So I think we do really want to make every accommodation we can. I'm probably more, I know the impact of this now more after my wife had knee surgery, and we had a temporary handicap hanger, and just to know that how much easier life was with that than without it. And we have a great staff here. I think we have wonderful people here, but we're not, as a group, council and staff, opposed to looking outside our community to see what solutions have been come up from other areas, and borrowing or stealing them from them and adapting them to our own situation. So I'm sure that's what we'll do. We'll go out and look for other cities who have done this before and done it the least expensive way, but the most opportune way to help the population that needs it.
Where there's a will, there's a way.
Yeah.
Right.
And so I really hope that Winston-Salem will have the will to do this.
I think so. Can we just ask then that the city manager follow up on this with the staff to see and bring back to council options?
I think we can bring back a plan to do it exactly the way she requested. We will. I would suggest that we at least consult with the downtown partnership and the merchants and the residents, because there will be, that's changed.
Well,
so we need to at least let them know what's going on.
Has said that Jason.
I started, as Molly knows, I wrote to Jason Field, and I did not know him. I've never met him to this day, but from talking to him, he was extremely supportive, very supportive. And I have also talked to Terry, who owns Camino. I've talked to the people who own Washington Park, the Aperture, Lauren, who owns the Aperture, the Symphony. When I talked to, he was the CFO of the Symphony. Anyway, I wrote to them, and I met him, and he said he would do anything he could to assist that this could be done. Because going to the Symphony, going to the Stevens Center, the one thing, and I wrote a piece that I sent to Molly, and she sent to all of you, that I'm really happy about, is that the Stevens Center is the only place on 4th Street that has an automatic door. I can ride in my car, punch the button, and the door opens. Coming here was a real challenge. There is no handicap parking in City Hall. That is shocking. No handicap parking. I came up the ramp, had to punch the button, and some man's voice came through and opened up the door. But it is pretty, in 2016, when ADA was passed in 92, it is pretty shocking.
Yes.
We do have handicap parking in the parking lot. We just don't have any same issue on street. Yeah, you got to go all the way around.
I have a VW van, and the handicap parking is way up on the ramp. For me to park there and walk all the way down with my cane, if I want to go to Camino or go to Aperture, I can't do it.
Right.
So if my husband has said, I am not letting you out of the car again, we park in the 2 spaces across from the Milton Roads. That's private, you have to pay. It's private parking. And if there's spaces there, we park there. then we have to ride all the way up the street and around. And so, it just,
Yeah. Nancy, thank you so
Yeah.
much.
We'll bring
Thank
back
you
a
very, very much.
Thank
We-
you all
We
for
will
that.
follow up
I
on that.
really
I
do
say we.
appreciate it.
A drawing, potentially, if we get to that point.
We'll bring a
of
drawing.
where the spaces could
They need to be
possibly go.
close to the
Yeah.
corners and
Yeah.
the right with the curb
Yeah.
And
cuts.
I would love to be a community
We will
But just
definitely,
volunteer.
absolutely. We've deputized.
We couldn't stop you.
But
We couldn't
Even
stop
if we
you.
wanted to.
Right?
well, go to Greensboro, where Elm Street is.
Mhm.
On every cross street, they have got 4 places.
Mr. Turner.
Thank you, Nancy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
I appreciate it. So I'll go.
Yes.
Can we get a motion on G2 to move it forward to the council meeting on November 21st? I think in our discussion,
What was G2?
the legislative package, just to move it forward.
Oh, okay.
I'll move that we move the package forward without recommendation.
That's fine,
So-
that's all we
Second.
need.
Okay.
Just for the.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, very good, thank you. So, G7.
Item G7, ordinance revising Chapter B of the Unified Development Ordinances to amend regulations for accessory dwellings, UDO 267, proposal of the City County Planning and Development Services staff, recommended by the Planning Board. This item was continued from the August meeting of the Community Development, Housing and General Government Committee.
Shall I start? By the way, we have staff here to answer. I think, to my mind at least, most of what we have in the ordinance is acceptable. The one thing that I don't see and I think is paramount is parking. If you allow, like in some of your pictures, accessory dwelling on an RS7 lot
Right.
with no driveway. So to my mind, that ought to be an automatic no. That you have to have parking space off the street. You don't like that, okay. And there are ways to do it. For example, in one of our demolition cases, shared driveways and things like that. And in fact, you could have an itty-bitty little driveway, but so that's one of my main objections. Kirk.
Councilmember Light, if I could, again, we didn't show the parking on the site plan since we were mainly trying to show the setbacks and things of that nature. But in the ordinance, we do have a provision that I'll read for you right now related to parking. One off-street parking space, so again, off-street, per accessory unit, bedroom shall be provided. In no case shall less than one off-street space be provided per accessory unit. So
Okay.
this
All right,
would,
then
that provision was baked into the last
Yeah.
version of the ordinance, and we just didn't show it in that one
Right.
particular
I'll
picture.
send it.
All right, very good. What questions do people have? Yeah.
Well, because I've been a little busy lately, where are we with the 9,000 square foot lot size?
Well, that's
The
still-
committee talked about it in, I guess it was September when we last met, and again, we did the drawing at your request to show how a 7,000 square foot lot could be accommodated, but my understanding was that the committee was going to decide whether 9,000 was the appropriate number or whether something smaller, something larger. That's still wide open for your consideration.
And another thing, certainly, okay, the parking is addressed. The maximum size. I know at one point, this has gone on so long, that we were talking about 500 square foot as a maximum on small lots, and then maybe 1,000 on big lots.
The way it is in the current ordinance, it's much how you describe it, Councilmember Light, in that it's gradated. It's 5% of the lot, with a maximum cap at 1,000 square feet. But the way that would work on a standard 9,000 square foot lot is you would be capped at 450 square feet because that's 5% of 9,000.
Right.
So again, that's baked into the
Right.
current draft.
Okay, I just couldn't do the math. Yeah.
And I guess part of the issue for me is the 9,000 square foot lot restriction leaves out an awful lot of the city that I think is most eligible or would most respond positively to this. So what on a 7,000 square foot lot or a 5,000 square foot lot, which exists in West Salem and many parts of East Winston, how do you square that? What happens in that case?
We did exclude those when we were working this through with the planning board and citizens who came with, we held a few public meetings on this. The reason we did that is we had some folks come to those meetings from neighborhoods with smaller lots that had concerns about accessory dwellings going into their units and making the density perhaps a little more than they thought they were getting when they moved into those neighborhoods. The staff went with 9,000 square feet as a minimum lot size to allow accessory units because we felt that was kind of the gateway for a conventional lot size where it wasn't really too small at that point. It could easily accommodate this and probably not have an effect on the visual character of the neighborhood. But again, there's plenty of examples. If you look in other cities, go on Google, you can find small lots that have appropriately scaled accessory units. And that provision that we talked about, the 5%, on a 7,000 square foot lot, that would be 350 square feet for the accessory unit. So it would be smaller as well.
Tiny. I mean,
a tiny house.
Well.
Oh God, don't say that.
But practically, for many people unuseful. It doesn't make sense to build a 300 square foot place for most people. I guess to me, I'm having trouble with the 9,000 square foot issue, sort of going counter to Legacy 2030. And what we're looking for is ways to increase walkability, livability, density to prevent the sprawl from occurring outside. So that whenever we build an accessory dwelling unit in town, we're not building one outside. So to me, I still really struggle with it.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Kurt.
Councilmember Adams.
Again, to Councilman McIntosh's comment, in the urban core where the poor people live, a lot of us, we're getting older. A lot of parents are glad that their kids are staying by because as they get older, they want to stay at home as long as they can. And if that means my 26, 30-year-old grandson or daughter needs a building to live in, a small for them, which they don't need space like we do. Like I tell people, times have changed. Younger people aren't interested in anything above 1,000 square feet, if that, to live in. My question to you is, where is it in here that allows for neighborhoods to become, based on the no parking on the lawn ordinance we have? How do we address it if there's a neighborhood of older houses, homes, people that decide that they want to be able to allow family members to live in an accessory type dwelling in their neighborhoods, that they could implement that through the process of like we have now, where it's a percentage, sign a petition, and we want that. How does that fit in?
Looks like Ms. Carmen and her staff did some research on that, and I'll let her answer that question.
We can come up with a process to allow that. I guess what I was going to say, listening to Councilman McIntosh and you as well, maybe for the lots that are smaller than 9,000 square feet, maybe we can come up with a process where they can have the ability to vote to have.
Correct. That's what I'm talking about.
The accessory dwelling.
Well, and then certainly that's one of the things that staff has in here about opt-in, opt-out kind of situations. Dan?
Yeah, I have one specific question and then sort of a general comment. If I may, the specific question is in setbacks 8A. What's the justification for cutting the rear setback in half for an attached accessory or for an accessory dwelling?
Well, the reason we did that is that's actually a significant increase from what's in the current ordinance. The current ordinance today, if you got a permit for an accessory dwelling unit, you can have it 3 feet off both the side and the rear property line. So when we were looking at this, we thought, it probably doesn't make sense for a much smaller structure than the principal residence on the lot to have the same 25-foot rear setback or 20-foot if it's in RS7 zoning. So we were trying to find a happy medium between the current standard, which we felt is probably too impactful on neighbors, but as Councilmember McIntosh said, trying to find a way to accommodate what Legacy does support in terms of providing gentle density in the urban core. So that's why we kind of came up with a halfway measure between what's currently on the books and what would apply to a principal residence.
I think the thinking is admirable. I suspect, though, that in terms of the impact on the neighbors, there's little or no practical difference between a main dwelling and an accessory dwelling that's occupied. And I would like to see that changed to specify that the regular setback of 25 feet apply. And I hear my colleagues warming up, but the truth is that in the neighborhoods that I represent, the complaint that I know I'm going to get second most often about this is reduced setback. The complaint that I'm going to get most often relates to my general comment, which is we keep talking about extended family and seniors, and as we are advised, the law does not permit us to restrict these. And in fact, what we will see, particularly in existing neighborhoods with the smaller lots, we will see potentially a great increase in the addition of a double rental situation. And that is what I know the constituents that I have heard from over the years will most strenuously, people I object to, and they will come after me with the torches and the pitchforks if I vote to bless that situation. But the most I could vote for, based on constituent wishes, would be an opt-in for those neighborhoods.
For the smaller one?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for a whole neighborhood to opt in?
Well, for an area to opt in, and with some reasonable definition of what the opt-in territory encompasses. But an opt-in.
Yeah. Well, and in fact, my on the picture just past 124, you have the drawing here with the larger setback. That's fine, but only a 5-foot setback from the side. Now, if that were over on the lot that's these houses back up to, the accessory dwelling could be 10 feet off of the next house. So I think somehow there needs to be, in this conversation, as you say, an opt-in or out or however, and also, the health and safety question and all of that the ZBA would have to look at now. Because if this house builds an accessory dwelling that impinges on this house, they have to have some recourse to object to that. So,
well, I guess what we're asking or saying is the opt-in, opt-out. If you have a situation like this, or whatever, again, we have to respect, as we all know, the rights or the property owners' property lines. Got that. But if a person is adhering to the setbacks that we're looking at or whatever, and they want to put an accessory building there, then they could do that. And I would expect or think that if a neighborhood, again, engaged, everybody's going to know what's going on. And once we do this, again, education is key. Even if we have to do a 101 on 13 every week or something, just give them bits and pieces, give them examples like you've done here, and explain it, it's going to be key, because you don't want neighbors falling out with each other, but you also want to be able for everybody to understand that just because you got a house here, which is a strange looking lot,
Yeah, it really is.
I mean, it's like they used up every piece that they could. And then you got the person next door who didn't, and now I want my grandson to come live so he can help me get to the doctor. You know? So,
Yeah, and the thing is, though, when you start talking about opt-in, opt-out, you run into the same sort of thing that the conservation overlays ran into. Where do you draw a line? Is it each block? Is it the whole of Ardmore neighborhood? You know, that's a difficult question, and it has to be resolved before, you know, we can go on with this ordinance.
Councilmember Light, if I could offer you a little clarification, the way the NCO language is written, it doesn't have to be as large as a neighborhood per se. It doesn't even have to be a platted neighborhood. What the language does say is there has to be identifiable characteristics that make it stand together as a unit. So sometimes that may be a plat, sometimes it may be a phase in terms of a newer neighborhood or something like that that was developed in clear different eras, but there is some flexibility in that particular ordinance piece that could be a model if the council did try to do something like this and what Ms. Attorney Carmen are talking about.
And that would hold up even, I mean, to say this is an area that is a cohesive area. All the houses look alike, da-da-da-da. That we won't go across the street because they're different looking houses. Isn't that going to run into the legislature saying you can't dictate anything based on?
It shouldn't be a problem because in this ordinance, we wouldn't be dictating that new development mirror those characteristics. Would just be picking up on patterns of existing development to establish basically zoning districts. Because this would be an overlay zoning district if we were to follow the same path with the neighborhood conservation overlay district, where it doesn't replace what's underlying in the zoning, it just adds another layer to the existing zoning of what's in place, further refine the regulations.
Like Dan, I face the wrath of several neighborhoods that I represent.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
But I really think we need to look at this historically. I mean, since the 1930s, I mean, you could have built one of these things anytime, anywhere. I don't think there's any massive pressure. Nothing has changed other than the desire to live downtown. But that desire was there, you know, back then. Some people did it, some people didn't. Buena Vista, West End, they have a significant number of these. The history and what we've seen in other cities that have done this recently is that we are not going to be overrun with them. But I understand people's fear that we will be. But my own belief is that we will not be, because people will be making rational decisions about the value of their property. Because when you put an accessory dwelling unit on your property, you're not necessarily going to make money when you sell it. There are buyers who will turn away from that because that is there. So that's a risk that the property owner has to take. And I'm for an opt-in versus an opt-out. I think if you're going to take away property rights from people, they have to say, okay, I'm willing to sacrifice those property rights. And I think you'll find large sections of my ward and large sections of your ward, but not all the Ardmore neighborhood, maybe not all the West End neighborhood, because there are different characteristics to those neighborhoods.
So you're saying opt-in?
That you would have to actively, as a neighborhood, say we want to be an NCO and we want to exclude our accessory dwelling units.
Oh, okay.
And of course, as with NCO and everything, there has to be a percentage acceptance.
And for NCO, we do a 55% acceptance to even bring in an application. Then when it gets to the council level, it has to be a 65% approval rating to actually become law.
Yeah. I will vote no on an opt-out. I can only vote yes on an opt-in, because I think that the process would be too arduous to make it practically available to the areas that are likely to be most impacted. What has changed, because I hear your concern on we're not going to be overwhelmed. What has changed, I think, is the demand for affordable rental options in our urban neighborhoods that will produce the kind of market pressure that we have not heretofore seen. And that, I think, will put particularly problematic stress on the edges of neighborhoods that where we're already seeing changes is in the ownership rates. We're seeing a changeover in increasing percentages of property to not owner-occupied with a desire for the second accessory unit, but we're seeing speculative purchases that put in sort of the minimum required maintenance and would find it commercially attractive to add a second smaller unit that they could then double their revenue from that.
In fact, West Salem just had a developer come to them, not a developer, an owner come to them, and he's been running, people in the garage, people in the basement,
But those things are dealt with
yeah, well,
other ways. So we're talking about built environments.
Yeah.
And having been in the real estate market as both a broker and an investor for 30 years, I don't agree with that analogy. I don't see prices changing. I don't see the character of the neighborhood changing.
Yes, I see it. I see it in areas I represent. It doesn't take many examples of a low responsibility landlord creating minimum setbacks, maximum return from properties that they happen to be able to pick up on the cheap to adversely impact a larger area than we might think.
So we're agreed that we want Kirk to come back to you all with an opt-in situation. And also, we talked about it, but what about the square footage? Let it rip 700, and with a special acceptance of something other than a 300 square foot?
No,
To the 7,000 square foot lot,
Oh, yeah.
if it can meet the setbacks to be able to build, let's say, the 450,
And I
like
think we
like a 9,000.
Set a minimum at 450.
Yeah.
And for the 7,000, it would actually be 350.
Right.
Yeah,
Would be the-
so
Which is impractical.
Yeah, yeah.
Effectively says you
that's-
can't do it.
And, okay, and the other thing, too, is the setback, back setback.
I would ask if my colleagues are willing to accept the regular rear setback, and if not, I'll move it independently as an amendment on the council.
Well, I mean, certainly the 25 or 28 foot setback, why is it 28 and then 25 other places?
It should be 20. Councilmember Light, where are you seeing 28 for the rear
The
setback?
very first picture. That's over in my
Is it
old-
possible to waive that setback if your neighbors say they're okay with it?
Something like that with the chicken.
Yeah.
I'm not aware of any zoning ordinance where folks have the opportunity to just waive setbacks with property owner consent.
Don't wanna
That's
do
usually a pretty hard and fast rule in zoning ordinances.
No, then I think 25 feet is too much.
You think 25 feet is too much? And Dan?
And you're going to exclude an awful lot of properties.
And I think that an awful lot of properties ought to be excluded because of the adverse impact of having it too close. So, I'm fine with simply moving that as an independent amendment to whatever proposal comes out.
And we'll look at maybe smaller setback, provided certain circumstances if they're met or something.
That's where I was
Okay.
going.
All right, that would be
If
great.
you got a functioning
And I'm thinking
compromise.
edge cases
You
as well, not as.
you don't find large lots, basically, in the neighborhoods that we serve, a lot of. And these houses have already been built in such a state that they're close anyway. So I think we need something especially for that, because again, in the, the east, northeast, southeast, and north ward, the inner areas, we need something else because we don't have the same course of action as they got. We need a one shoe doesn't fit all. We gotta make it so it's palatable to the other parts of the city. I know they're protecting their neighborhoods and their constituents, but we need to be able to help and assist ours.
Councilmember Adams, would you be interested in a situation where, as Mr. Bessie said, the default would be the setback of the district, but if you met certain criteria, then you could do what staff was proposing now, which was half of the district?
All right.
We'll work on that.
Okay.
Okay.
Good.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay, so we'll leave it in your hands. Again.
You wish
Again?
this
Are you
to come
getting
back to
tired of
committee
it?
again,
Yeah,
Councilmember?
we probably should come back, maybe December.
Yeah, that'd
Okay.
probably be good. I
Okay.
won't be here. But, yeah, so is that okay with everybody? We
Good.
just keep working on it.
We've been working on this one like
Okay,
a tree.
is there anything else
I
that we
know.
need to address?
I think it's good from
Oh.
the staff's end.
Lee just left. I had a question for him.
We went on.
Yeah, okay. But, so I think we're okay on this, all right?
Thanks, Kurt.
Thank you.
Thanks to you very much,
Thanks,
Kurt.
staff, all the hard work. I know we've been kicking this can a long time.
Well, we appreciate your perseverance.
Not as long as the sign ordinance, so we're doing good.
I'll survive that one,
Oh,
I'll
and
survive
the
this.
tree save.
The sign and the tree deal.
Yeah. One thing I'd like to bring up to the committee is, again, it's something that may, from some of these pictures of demolition, Lee may already have asked that it be done. Some people who were having a house next door on the demolition list and had no way of knowing it because they didn't go up on his porch and look at the little paper on the door. But some of these pictures, when I show an actual sign out front, a yellow sign, and the request was to make that a standard, that there's actually something visible, like a zoning sign, but in this case, the yellow danger or whatever.
Regulatory sign.
So, as I say, if you'll pass that along, I think it may already have been implemented. So that's, at least from some of these pictures, there are signs like that. So hopefully. Well, folks, anything else to bring up?
No.
Okay. 3 hours, yeah. That's. And Dan gets to sit here for a while longer.
Public Works at 6 o'clock.
Okay, all righty, thank you all.
Thank you.
Adjourn?
Yep.
Oh.
Yeah, let me give you this.
Oh.